The last thing I'll say is that really to the Titans fans, the city of Nashville, and the great state of Tennessee, we're going to need your incredible support. You're a huge part of this. We need Nissan Stadium to be the most feared stadium that people walk into every Sunday. We need every possible bit of energy, every last amount of enthusiasm. Our players need to feel the energy. I can't wait to see you guys there. It's going to be a lot of work ahead, but a lot of fun as well. I'm proud. I'm humbled to be standing here before you as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Thank you.
There you go. That's your coach, Brian Callahan, new Titans head coach. Introductory press conference is in the rearview mirror. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
What'd you think?
Sounded good.
Got any other takeaway than that?
Not really.
Okay. Well, I thought it sounded good, too. So I want to start right here with kind of my big thing. Every head coach wins the introductory press conference unless they are a total buffoon like Adam Gase. And in Brian Callahan's case, he's no different. He won the introductory press conference. Congratulations. Let's put him in the Hall of Fame next to Jeremy Pruitt. So, again, it is an introductory press conference. It is what it is. But I kept thinking about how I reacted last year when Rand Carthon had his press conference. And I remember my big takeaway from the Rand Carthon introductory press conference was, I like the guy. Seems like a very likable guy. Seems like a very down-to-earth guy. Seemed like very likable. That was kind of my takeaway. Because, again, is the guy going to be a good general manager? How would you know from these introductory press conferences? Kind of the same with being a head coach, right? Do we know that Will Levis is going to take to his coaching because of what he said today, that kind of thing. So when we put that disclaimer kind of in the rearview mirror that it's just an introductory press conference, I do think that my big takeaway was Brian Callahan is ushering the Titans into the new era of the NFL. Now, that's not with some kind of incredible scheme. That's not with some kind of new way and analytics and this-driven, data-driven type. That's not what I'm talking about. Where he's entering the Titans into the new era of the NFL is where the new era of worker is today. Did you notice after COVID was over, so many people got laid off during COVID or got furloughed and they ended up finding different jobs. Or they ended up saying, well, I'm not going back there. And as soon as everything got back up and running, it was almost like, man, all of these jobs cannot get filled. Oh, boy, we can't fill this job. We can't fill that job. And while some people blamed stimulus money in the government, I think a lot of it was today's worker didn't want to do things that they were forced to do, that they assumed to do, that they just had to do 10, 15 years ago. People want to work from home now. People want to do things differently. And there is no changing it. I don't care if you're the CEO of Apple or if you're the president of the United States or if you're a talk radio host or if you're the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. There is no changing the way society grows. And that's what Brian Callahan is bringing to the Titans. He kept talking about communication being key. Talked about his kind of how calm he was. Kept talking about, hey, I can still hold people accountable, but the key is to communicate to them what the expectations and the standards are. There wasn't a lot of tough guy talk there. The NFL used to be about the tough guy. The NFL used to be, we're going to go and we're going to take them and we're going to. And it wasn't so much about feelings. But that's where we're headed now as a society. It doesn't make us soft. 15 years ago, people didn't talk about openly being in therapy. Now they do. Parents treat their kids differently than they used to. Thus, kids grow up differently and have different expectations when they get out into the real world. Well, the guys he's coaching are 24, 25, 28 years old. The old school way, I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because to a certain extent I think it does. But the Bill Belichick authoritarian, we're going to do things my way, I'm the head coach, I'm going to yell at the guys all day, every day, I'm going to make their lives miserable, that doesn't work anymore. And Brian Callahan doesn't do that. At first, when he kept talking about, when he was up there doing his thank yous and he talked about his family and he mentioned every single member of the family. I mean, he's talking about brother-in-laws, and I'm like, wait a minute. Brother-in-law and his wife. So that would have to be what? His wife's brother's wife. They got to thank you at the press conference. So at first, when he started doing this, I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit. And then all of a sudden, he started talking about the Bengals. And he started to well up. And boy, it was hard for him to thank Zack Taylor. And when he was asked about, his dad and how proud he was of his dad or how proud his dad would be of him, he started to well up again, talking about, I guess a young boy always wants to be like a father. And he was about one more sentence away from the floodgates, and then somebody asked a different question. Mike Vrabel's not going to cry up there at the podium like that. But that's the old school way. That's the never show weakness, never show blood, never ever we're going to work hard all day, we're going to be here all. And that's the way it used to be. That's the way people used to do things. We always hear all the time about, man, I'll tell you, these kids today are soft. And it is true. Because my generation isn't even the young generation anymore. And the generation younger than us, I think they are freaking soft. But we can't change what the generation is. We can accept that this is where this is going. And when I talk about how he thanked his family, and he thanked the Bengals, and he thanked everybody ever associated, his high school coach, everything else, then he turned to what the team is now. Thanked Amy, talked about relationships with Rand. And there was one thing in particular he said that I have in my notes here about every single person, that they're going to establish a culture of high standards and communication. And everyone around the players will be experts. And how he can't wait to meet everybody in the building. And he already loves all the people he's already met. What he's doing here is he realizes that as a coach, he has to make everybody feel special. Because that's the world we live in today. The Patriot way was everybody works for Bill, and we work all these days and nights, and we don't sleep, and we don't go home, and we don't do anything fun at all. But it's okay because we win a lot, and then we all get better jobs at the end of it. It's a miserable, miserable grind. But we win, so everybody's happy. That doesn't work today. That's not where this is headed. I watched the Football Life documentary on Belichick the other night. And I'm not sitting here to crap on Belichick, but I watched the Football Life documentary on Belichick, and it was the behind the scenes of Belichick in the 2009 season and everything else. And the way people reacted to criticism, the way people handled their own situations, it was different. It's different than it is today. Talk to any teacher who's been teaching for 20 years, and they'll say, boy, when I first got into this, you were allowed to X, Y, Z, and you're not anymore. Now we live in a society where everybody wants to feel special. Every single person in that building wants to feel like they are cared about. And Brian Callahan gets that. That's what the Titans are going to be. It is not an accident that, again, before he even took a question, he thanked his family and talked about them. He thanked Cincinnati and he talked about them. Tears when talking about Zack Taylor. His high school coach in California thanked him. The coach who gave him his first job thanked him. Everyone around the players will be experts. Can't wait to meet everybody. Already met Will Levis. Again, that is the society we live in today. The society we live in today is if somebody feels like you're looking out for them, that you care about them, they will respond better. They will react better than the resentment that comes with the, you work for me and you're lucky enough to do that. That's the old society. New society's different. And Vrabel was not a bad coach, and I will give him credit because I didn't think he really took a pot shot at Vrabel, and he could have. And I'm sure that they would have loved it if he did. But that was the old school approach. That was the, everybody's a tough guy. Nobody talks about their feelings. Nobody shows weakness. That was the old approach. The new approach is, I want everybody every day to feel special. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's doing a good job all the time and there aren't going to be standards and they're not this. But again, just the way, and I don't even know if I've done a good enough job articulating this, but just the vibe I got from that press conference was that in today's era of worker, and these football players, they're still people. We see all the old coaches. Now, some of this is because of the money and everything else, but it brings a certain level of entitlement, which is what people care about, is different generation to generation. But all these old coaches, they're like, I'm getting out of this. Coach K, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, Nick Saban. It's like, I've had my time. Time to let somebody else coach them because it's a different era. The players are different. The kids are different. It's just they're all different. And I think that what they've got in Cincinnati with Zack Taylor and the way that they react and the way that they talk about their feelings, and I think that's where we're headed today in society. And that's what Brian Callahan was right there. And so I just, quite frankly, I think that for the most part, we're all in this together. Everybody loves each other. I think that as, lame maybe as it sounds coming out of my mouth, I think that is the new way to increase production. And I don't think anybody does it better than the coach in Detroit. With the, we're all in this together. I love every last one of you to death, and I'll bleed for you. And that's where the game's headed. And that's what you have now in a coach. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Your reaction to what you thought of the press conference. 615-737-1025. He did talk about Will Levis a lot, which we'll get into. And he was talking about coaching staff and everything else. But there's one thing that I think I really, really, really felt good about. Because I heard Nick Saban say it once. And I heard him say it on this station, and it resonated with me when I was about 25 years old. And I've never forgotten it. And he said something very similar to that. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. And, of course, your reaction. What'd you think of your new coach, Brian Callahan, in his opening press conference? Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
He's been known as a guy who has been able to take quarterbacks and maximize what they do, like you mentioned before, even to the point of adjusting from Joe Burrow to Jake Browning in the middle of the year. What's kind of been the key to that you've found in terms of maximizing what a guy can do?
Communication. Being able to hear what quarterbacks are comfortable with, what they like. The offense is always going to have enough plays. There's always going to be enough scheme. And so you want to know what the quarterbacks feel great about. And Jake was incredible with his ability to communicate what he liked. We put those things in for him so he could have success. And that's part of what fosters a great quarterback room is the communication between myself, the coordinator, the quarterback's coach, and the quarterbacks in the room is knowing what they like and what they do well. And we try to do as much of that as possible. So if a quarterback says, I don't like something, we're not going to use it, we're not going to call it. And that to me is the most critical part. If you have great feedback and great rapport and a great relationship with those guys, they'll do a great job of giving you the information you need to help them and put them in position to be successful. And Jake was fantastic at it and obviously led to quite a bit of success.
There you go. That was Titans head coach Brian Callahan. And when I heard that, it reminded me of a former coach I talked to before Will Levis made his first start. Former head coach in the NFL who had grown quarterbacks as an offensive guy and a head coach. And I said, Coach, take me through this with a young quarterback. And the real question I had was not, how do you coach him? But it was more so, how do you know if a young quarterback is the guy? But the coach, being a coach, talked more about what it's like to coach him. And he said in baseball, they use the term manager. That is the head coach of a baseball team, as everybody knows in Major League Baseball, is a manager. And he said, as an offensive coach, when you've got a young quarterback, you're a manager. You got to ask him, what do you like? What do you feel comfortable running? When the guy would make a mistake, it's, we're better than that. Not, why did you miss that throw? How could you have this? And I thought that that's exactly what he was talking about right there. And that is ushering in the new wave of how to treat young people, of how to treat workers. And so there was one thing that really stood out to me. Years ago, we went to SEC Media Days, and Nick Saban came on the show, and Nick Saban was on with Derek. Nick would do like the Birmingham station, the Atlanta station, and he'd do our station twice because he wanted to go on Floyd's show, and Derek played for him at Michigan State. And Derek asked him, I don't even remember what Derek asked him, but he started talking about the system they run at Alabama. And he said, I bet in life, this happens way too often. And even for you in the radio, and I'm not saying, and I'm quoting Saban here, paraphrasing, I'm not saying, what you did, but just oftentimes in life, it's, hey, you're Derek Mason. You played in the NFL. Here's a microphone. Go. He goes, and there's a lot of things that operate like that, but they shouldn't. When you get to Alabama, we lay out for you the exact expectation when you get there. We tell you everything on the front end so that you know what we expect out of you. Not that there's any gray area, not for you to try to see how far you can get away with, how little you can do. No, we tell you right away. Brian Callahan was asked about holding people accountable because, again, when you come off as a nice guy, sometimes I do think there is so is this guy going to be a player's coach and a pushover? Here's what Brian Callahan said.
You're either coaching it or you're allow it to happen. How do you go about holding each coach and player to a high standard and just, figuring out where they count?
You have to define them. You have to define what the standard is. A lot of that has to do with execution. The way I like to say it is be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And so as you show guys what the standard is, what the expectation is, the easiest way to do it is if they don't meet it is to show what that looks like. This isn't what we're looking for. This isn't what we want. You can be very clear and very demanding without having to go jumping through hoops and having the fire raging from your head, but it's pretty simple. Here's what the standard is. Here's the expectation. And then when it's not being met, make sure that we're coaching and teaching where we've fallen short. And that's, to me, is the easiest way to describe how you keep people accountable and you hold people to a high standard.
What I've learned in life, and it was very hard for me to do this, but what I've learned is that if there's a problem, addressing it head on, while it may be painful in the moment and the anxiety may kick into a 10 out of 10 before doing it, usually yields the best results. set the standard, explain the standard, and when the standard isn't being met, show them how they're doing it wrong. Explain, and then make them aware of the consequences and why you feel the way that you do. And either that person's going to get on board or they're not. But it's not going to be like, well, coach is mad at me today because if coach shoots it straight with everybody, then you'll know if coach is mad at you. And again, sounds a lot like what Nick Saban said years ago. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in, again, on your new head coach. Text her into the text line. LD from McMinnville says, I can tell you've never held a blue-collar job. Don't be talking about me holding blue-collar jobs. I'm telling you where the world is going. And the truth is I feel like, and Ian, I want your opinion on this. I feel like where our parents' and grandparents' generation was, you go to work and you be thankful that you've got that job and everything they say at work goes, period. Right?
I'd say that's probably true for the most part, yeah.
And then as it's transitioned, it's kind of more like a partnership between employer and employee. And I'm sure that drives some employers freaking crazy. But that's the way it is. People don't want to be bossed around all day. People don't want to be belittled and demeaned, and they don't want that. And they don't want to they don't want to work a strenuous job for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and not be paid for it. And you can sit there and bitch about society if you want and say, well, back my day, we was better. We had better values. You do that. Or you can be realistic about where we are as a society today and know that if you're going to get 20 new football players, you're getting them from today's society. You aren't getting them from yesteryear. So to sit there and say, well, I can tell you've never worked a blue-collar job. I mean, again, I don't feel one way or another if I have or if I haven't. I mean, I've worked hard in my life. I get mocked all the time for working in women's basketball as an equipment manager. I feel like that's kind of a blue-collar job. But again, it's a different era. And either you adjust or you don't. You're Bill Belichick, and everybody looks at you like you're a dinosaur. And I think that's probably why Bill doesn't have the Falcons job right now, is because Bill keeps wanting to do things the Bill way, and I don't think Bill is willing to adjust the way Bill wants to do things, and he's thinking, I'm Bill Belichick. You should want to do things the Bill way. It's 2024. It's a little different. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. We got a lot of them. Plus, there was one thing that I laughed at in this press conference because I liked it, and it's why I liked it, and it's something I would have hated 6 years ago. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company. 615-737-1025. TD will be with us. His thoughts from the press conference for the Power Hour at 3 o'clock. Tune into 94.9 The Fan Saturday for Vandy basketball. The Commodores will be taking on Tennessee at home. Tip-off is at 5. Pregame is at 4:30. And coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. And women's basketball is on the road Sunday on 94.9 The Fan, taking on South Carolina. Tip-off is at 2. That's a big test for Shea. Tip-off is at 2. Pregame's at 1:45. And coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
What is your philosophy on defense? We heard a lot about your offensive stuff, but what's your defense philosophy?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you talk defensively. We're working through, what that's going to look like for us by the types of people we're going to bring in. But at the end of the day, you got to have a very flexible and adaptable defense. You still have to be physical. You still have to run and hit. You have to tackle well. You have to force errors. There's a lot of things you can do that in the coverage structure game, in the pressure package game, where it makes it really hard on an offense. And so I know it gives me problems. I know the hard defenses to game plan against, and those are the things that I'm looking for in the style of defense we're going to play. Without getting too far down a bunch of characteristics, don't mean much until we put the pads on, but that's what I look for. Is what makes it hard for me as an offensive coach. That's the style of defense that I'm looking for.
Are you a 3-4?
Oh, they're multiple nowadays. Yeah, 5-man fronts are part of football. Whether you're a 3-4, whether you're an under front, there's going to be those types of players. Everything about the way the structure of the defense is built here is going to be pretty similar as a starting point, but I hesitate to put labels on what and how we're going to do it at this point.
I loved it. Oh, God, I loved it. What's your defensive philosophy? We're going to bring some people in here and we'll figure it out. We got to tackle. And, we got 5-man fronts, and we'll do some of this, and we'll do some of that. And he committed to nothing there. And you want to know why he committed to nothing there? Because he's farming that side of the ball out, which is exactly what I wanted. Oh, yes. That's where today's NFL is. 5 years ago, I wanted the coach who was a ball coach, who commanded the respect of every man in that room, that wanted to strap it up and get out there and let's light them up and And I wanted a defensive coach that could coach offense or know enough about it or whatever. But that doesn't matter anymore. That's not where the game is today. And I can either sit there and complain about it and say, we should want the head coach to be the coach of everything, or we can just acknowledge that where the success lies is the offensive coach who calls his own plays, which Brian Callahan's going to do, an offensive coach who calls his own plays, who runs the offense, who develops the quarterback, farms out the defense, farms out the special teams. And when you're mad about the defense, you will not be mad at Brian Callahan. You will be mad at whoever that defensive coordinator is. And that's why the defensive coordinator is going to get paid. But he's like 4-3, 3-4. I don't know. We're going to interview these guys. Whichever one we like the best, we'll hire, and he'll tell you what we're going to run. Great. Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, this is exactly what I wanted. The guru with the play sheet and the tight pants. And I didn't know if he was drinking a latte or not, but he farms out that defense and basically says, go down the hall if you want to talk defense. Vic Fangio just got fired or they mutually parted. I actually don't think it was a firing. I think he wants to go to the Eagles. I think he wanted to go to the Eagles last year, but he had already signed for big money with Miami. But Vic Fangio's gone, and I think the report is Brandon Staley's going to go in there. And, because McDaniel's just like, just go down the hall, just whatever. That's fine. And that's what I want. That's today's game. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joey from Gallatin says, I love your perspective, Jared. The jerk routine doesn't work anymore. A great coach makes it clear what he expects, but he doesn't have to beat on his chest and coach like, I'm not going to say that either. Yeah. These young quarterbacks are coming up in the transfer portal. They aren't being met in the middle or at least being listened to by the coach. They know they can go somewhere else and be successful. Talk is cheap, but I like what I'm hearing from Coach Callahan. I don't know what the transfer portal has to do with any of this. This is not college football. But I think the idea, and I don't think this is a football thing. I think this is a society thing. I think the idea that you work for me, I think that's over. I really do. I know I work for my bosses, but I just think there's a lot of, instead of you work for me, I think it's more you work with me than it is you work for me. And that is where this is all headed. And again, that's not a football thing. That's a society thing. And I think that's how the Bengals operate. That's how Brian Callahan operates. It's just as one texter says, Jared is speaking facts. Can't lie. The world has gotten weaker. Of course. Every generation thinks the world gets softer. I'll use feelings as an example here. Get a little philosophical here for a second. I don't know what it was like in the 1980s and the 1970s and the 1960s because I didn't live in it. But I can assume. And I can assume that back then people were told, hey, tough it up. Whatever it is you're dealing with, tough it up. And I think a lot of people bottled inside a lot of things that really hurt them, that they were struggling with, whether it was mental health, whether it was, something going on in their personal life, whatever it may be. In today's era and society, and I actually think this is a good thing, we are encouraged more often to share with others what is bothering us, where our struggles are. I hear Big Joe say it at the end of that show every day about the suicide helpline. Every single show. Because instead of trying to tough it out, it's, hey, let's work through this. Now, you tell me which society is better. The one that tells everybody tough it out or the one that says let's get through this together? So I'm sure every society sits back and says, oh, they're so soft and they're so weak. But I look at Dan Campbell, and I've never met Dan Campbell. I don't even think I've been in the same room as Dan Campbell, outside of the one time that him and Tannehill came in here when he was interim coach of the Dolphins, and they beat the stuffing out of Mariota and Ken Wisenhunt, and that was so long ago. But other than that, but I guarantee you, if something is going on, and I'm not saying Vrabel didn't do any of this, because Vrabel did talk about this, about taking care of people and things like that. But if something is bothering somebody at the Lions, I bet you Dan Campbell is the perfect person to deal with it. Belichick? Probably not. It's just where we are. And I don't think it's a bad thing either. Skylar asks, is Brian Callahan's play sheet the size of a Waffle House menu, front and back preferably? So, I don't know. I do wonder how big it is. The Texans coaches all have like 8 by 11 and a half, like printer paper. They have like regular papers that they talk from. I don't like that. I want the whole freaking laminated thing that covers the face. That's what I want. That's how I know you're a guru. I know you're a guru if you've got a play sheet that is so big that it looks like it needs to be folded 8 ways in order to fit. Brett from Dover says, with as much as Jared loves Joe Burrow, he should be over the moon about Brian Callahan. Well, I mean, Joe Burrow's not going to be the Titans quarterback. And as much as I believe in coaching, because I do think coaching matters, and I do think nurturing quarterbacks is incredibly important, I mean, Joe Burrow's a special cat. And so, we do this all the time with these coaches where we talk about, we want that offensive coordinator from that team. And it's like, because you want to be exactly like that team. I get it. But 99% of the time, you're not going to be exactly like that team, even if you have success. The one difference is Kirby Smart, right? You hire the Saban assistant because you want the Saban coach, and that is what Kirby Smart is. Like, he is the young Nick Saban. Texture says, I think Callahan is a guru that can also make some relationships and lead guys better than the gurus that just stuffs his face in the play sheet. But it seems like a little bit of both worlds. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the gurus. Like, I don't know how these guys handle their teams away from it. I watched the Hard Knocks when Mike McDaniel was running the Dolphins, and, like, he kind of turned me off a little bit in terms of, like, how I always felt like he was trying to impress the players, whether it was by cursing to show that, oh, yeah, let me use the F word as much as possible, or it was like wearing like a Louis Vuitton sweater in the facility. And I'm like, where's the Dolphins hoodie, dude? Like, do you really have to wear the Louis Vuitton to show the players, like, yeah, I'm rich too. Like, we're all rich, but the Dolphins hoodie is free. But I don't know, like, what those guys are like in terms of how they manage their whole programs. And Zack Taylor, I thought he was kind of a doofus a couple years ago. And then it really changed for me when that DeMar Hamlin thing happened and the way that he, because he could have been a real stiff about that. But not only was he facilitating the decision for the NFL to cancel the game, but he also, I think he took Sean McDermott to the hospital, and there was like a picture of him driving him into the hospital. And I'm like, that's pretty impressive stuff. And I think that DeMar Hamlin game is a perfect example of where we're headed, right? Because the way it's always been in the toughen up society is, man got hurt on the football field. There's nothing we can do. Let's play football. And it's like, no, we're not playing football. We just watch this guy die. Like we're worried about other things here. Whereas, remember, the NFL wanted, what was it, like a 5-minute warm-up, and then we're going to go play again? And it's like, nah, players aren't doing that. Okay, fine, we'll cancel the game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. There was one question. I was shocked. Wasn't asked. We'll get to that in your phones next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063, The Game.
Your approach to balance on offense is so different from coordinator to coordinator, or play caller, etc.
Yeah.
For you, like, what is your approach to that, and how much does that impact your ability to adapt and make the adjustments that you have to do in a game?
Yeah, it really depends on the game, and I think there's games where you may end up running the ball for a bunch of yards and you're lopsided in the run. There's games where it's hard to run the football and you may push into the passing game. Really, at the end of the day, you try to be as balanced as you can be, but it's really whatever it takes to win that Sunday. And that's the best way I can say it. I don't worry too much about balance in that regard because we're trying to win, and whatever it takes that Sunday to win, we're going to do. You want to be balanced. That's ideal. You want to have a great marriage of your running pass game. You want to have a great play-action game to marry with your screen game. And you want to be able to throw the ball in the moments that everyone knows you have to throw it. Third downs, red zone, 2 minutes to go win a game. Those you have to be able to execute in all those situations to win a football game. And so the balance part is important to some degree, but ultimately it's going to be whatever it takes to win.
Hey, that was Brian Callahan on the offense. I got to get into media for a second. 28 questions in this press conference. Not one question about Derrick Henry. I mean, look, he's not going to commit one way or another to bringing Derrick Henry back or letting Derrick Henry go or anything like that into free agency. But, I mean, at least I would like to know, at least you can normally tell, like, when somebody's excited about something or when they're not. Say, Coach, have you thought at all about Derrick Henry? And if it's like, oh, man, I'll tell you, Derrick Henry, we really know that he's such a great running back, and we'll have to see what happens, but he really is a great running, blah, 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 blah. Then it's like, oh, he probably likes Henry. If it's like, hey, Derrick's been a great Titan, and I'm just now getting here, so I'll have to think about it, then it's like, I probably didn't like Derrick. But to not ask him about Derrick? It's Derrick Henry. That's just that. One texter says, Jared, I appreciate your coverage. I, for one, am looking forward to a coach who at least appears to be personable. The NFL is a billion-dollar industry paying multimillionaires from revenue generated from the average person who earns nowhere near that. The least the coach could do is respect the media and fans with honesty and integrity. Vrabel certainly seemed quite arrogant for no reason, and a change is welcome. So I do kind of laugh at that. Again, this is the first press conference, right? So if the team is 1-5 and they're doing stupid stuff out there, even if the coach is honest, you may not like that. Because there's nothing he can tell you when he's 1-5 that you're going to want to hear. What I like about the a-hole coaches, which I don't think Brian Callahan is, but what I think is hilarious about those guys is that when an a-hole coach wins, it is like, yeah, he showed you, media, you guys are just trying to make a story out of nothing, and he let you know, and he this, and he that, yeah. Tell him, Bill. But when you lose and you act like that, everybody gets turned off by it. So much so that it's so disrespectful the way that they treat the media. Again, win, it's, you take that, media. Lose, it's how disrespectful to the media. And I just always find that funny. I mean, look, I'll tell you about all the stuff that was said at the press conference or what wasn't or what this or what that. Again, he seems like a straight shooter. I like it. I think he's got kind of this Floyd Reese quality to him where he can really talk a lot and make you feel like he's telling you something, like giving you real information and actually tell you nothing, which is a true gift. John Robinson was terrible at that. Like, absolutely, it pained me to watch him try to do that because he was so bad at it. Vrabel didn't even care. He wasn't going to try. He was just going to, okay, let me answer it. I mean, I remember we had Vrabel on the show the day he got hired, and that interview was like pulling teeth. Like, you could tell he'd already done like 10 interviews, and it was like, okay, because like that's just, it's extra for, he didn't want to do that. Callahan, I think, has got that Floyd in him where I think he could do an hour on the radio. You would listen to it, walk away, and think, man, That guy is sharp. He is bright. He knows what he's talking about. I feel like my team is in good hands with him and not actually know one thing. Like, special about the team that you didn't already know. It's amazing. That being said, I think, too, like Barry Trotz, when he took the Predators job, was like, fans, like, this is going to be a little bit of time for us. I do think that was important. Now, you don't get that luxury in the NFL. Everybody wants to win right away. Everybody hates losing, so on and so forth. But I do think, like, being honest with the fans when things aren't great can't always hurt. JP in Brentwood says, you mentioned yesterday you felt this presser was more important for Rand Carthon than it was for Brian Callahan. Did Carthon impress you today? He didn't take any questions, so I guess that would be a N-A, non-applicable. Texter says, do you think Amy Adams and Rand wrote any of Brian Callahan's speech? Unless Rand is the second coming of you-know-who, he really emphasized how in love he is with him. Ian, you listened to that whole press conference. Did you feel like the love for Rand was over the top?
From who?
Callahan?
I don't think so.
I don't either. I mean, first of all, anybody who was taking the Titans job knew that collaborating and working together and partnerships and all kinds of buzzwords like that were what the Titans were looking for. We played the cut from Aaron Glenn, and it literally sounded like it was copy and pasted from what Rand and Amy had said that they were looking for when it came to collaboration. And maybe Aaron Glenn believes that, but if Aaron Glenn doesn't believe that, good for Aaron Glenn for having done his homework on a potential job. So whoever got the job was going to talk about their excitement to work with Rand. Mike Vrabel last year behind the scenes was talking about, I'd rather him be assistant general manager than general manager, and then got up there and talked about how excited he was to work with Rand. You know, that was, oh yeah, we're so excited. This is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be, I didn't think that the Brian Callahan butt kissing was any more than expected or any less that it would have been noticeable. I thought it was fine. The one thing that this is just a total, just my vibe as far as he and Rand are concerned, that I do think is a legitimate possibility, like I'm not counting out, is Rand's technically in charge, but Brian Callahan, I feel, has like a more assertive personality. And I don't mean that in like a commandeering way. I mean that in a, like it's very obvious he knows what he wants. Like it is very obvious. And Rand is the kind of guy who, again, collaboration, I think he's a pretty agreeable dude. Like I could see, even though Rand has final say, I could see Brian Callahan being the one that really like pulls the strings as to we're going to do this or we're not going to do that. That's just a total guess. I have no, again, I don't even know Brian Callahan. But I just kind of a vibe I got a little bit. 615-737-1025. TD has some ESPN responsibilities, so he will be joining us about 15 minutes late. So coming up next, before we get to TD, did you guys hear what Rand said? There was one thing Rand said today that I was like, oh, we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in on the new coach and the press conference today, 615-737-1025. We got MTSU men's basketball Saturday night. The Blue Raiders are at home taking on FIU. Pregame's at 4:30. Tip-off is at 5 o'clock. And coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Brian Callahan introduced today as the Titans head coach. I thought Paul Kaharski had a tweet that I thought was pretty accurate where he said he crushed it as expected. Because unless you're a total bozo, you're going to crush your opening press conference. Everybody's excited. Everybody's ready for the new era, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I was wondering was, to ingratiate himself, was Callahan going to take any pot shots at the guy who used to be head coach of the Titans? That happens every now and then. We see it. Gerard Mayo shockingly took a bunch of pot shots at Belichick, which I was a little surprised by, but I guess that's what Robert Kraft wanted. And he didn't. But Rand Carthon said something today that I was like, you be the judge. Here's what he said.
The one thing that stood out to us with Callie was just his ability to not only know what he wants, but be able to articulate that in a clear and concise manner. And what that would allow us to do, it allow our players to understand what their roles are and go out and execute and play fast, which is what we're going to do. But on the other side of that, as a scout, as a personnel guy, it gives us the ability to know what we're going out to hunt for. And one thing that we keep talking about here as our group is hunting at the same time isn't the same as hunting together. And under Brian Callahan, we will be going out and hunting together. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited, and I'm actually ready to get off this podium and get ready to get started.
Ian, do you think that was a pot shot at Vrabel?
It kind of sounded that way. I mean, it's hard to not take it like, hey,
Hey, the thing I know about this guy is that hunting together is not the same as hunting at the same time. And yet 2 weeks ago, hey, everything was great. We were in lockstep on everything. Collaboration was perfect, blah, blah. But no, you just got to bite a little bit. And I love it. I love the pettiness. Now, here's the thing I will say. I actually think what Rand's talking about is really important. And I actually also believe that the Titans are going to be able to do this. Because one time I happened to be the third wheel in a conversation between Floyd and Terry Crisp. So we used to always have Crispy on 4:30. So when they'd be at home, Crispy would come. If we were at Pete and Terry's, he'd be there. If we were at Barrel House, he'd be there. And so one time, Crispy was on the show, and the conversations that he and Floyd would have off the air before we either come back from break or after we were done, I mean, I consider myself lucky to have been the third guy amongst those two, old school coaches. And this was around the trade deadline one year. And Floyd asked Crispy off the air. He said, when you coached, did you ever want to say and, go upstairs and say, hey, what are we doing at the trade deadline? What are you? And Crispy's like, no, he's like, just give me the players. I'll coach them. And Floyd told a story that one time he went to the coaches and he said, hey, what do you guys need? And they said, we need a corner. And he goes, what kind of corner? Do you need a man-to-man corner? Do you need a zone corner for a Tampa 2? Do you need a tall corner? Do you need a fast corner? Like, great, we need a corner. No, duh, you need what kind of corner do you need? And I laughed so hard because I think with Vrabel, that might have been part of the issue that Brian Callahan's not going to have. Brian Callahan's been in the NFL for 16 years. Brian Callahan's also worked at the Bengals, where, as he noted today, he's got a lot of experience in personnel because at the Bengals, they don't really have much of a scouting system. So once the season is over, coaches, buckle up, you're in for scouting. So he knows what kind of corner or running back or tackle or inside backer. He knows what it is that they're going to be looking for, or at least on the offensive side of the ball, and then he'll probably hire somebody on the defensive side of the ball who knows what they're looking for so they can go to Rand, and instead of saying, hey, Rand, we need a corner, he can say what kind of corner he needs. And that's not a knock at Vrabel's football knowledge or acumen or anything else. It's about his experience. I think the two things that Mike Vrabel struggled with because of his experience, the coaching staff was one of them, where, again, his knowledge base of coaches that were out there was incredibly limited. He had coached with one NFL team for like 4 years, and then he goes and gets a head coaching job. So all the guys that he could hire were from the Texans or from Ohio State or who Matt LaFleur brought in when he came up with the Rams. That's all he could hire. He brought in his old defensive coordinator from New England, and by the time, all the guys that coached him, the Romeo Crennels and the Dean Peases, and those guys are pretty much Dante Scarnecchia. Those guys were getting out of the game. So he just didn't have the knowledge base for assistant coaches because he hadn't been in a bunch of different places to get to know a bunch of different guys who might know other guys and then have a network of coaches to be able to say, okay, we're going to put our staff together and this is what it's going to look like. He just didn't have that. And then the second was he is not a personnel guy. He's not a personnel guy because he's never done it, right? He was a player in the NFL, and players in the NFL, God bless them, and they work very, very hard, and they take a lot of risks, and they sacrifice a lot for their family, but they only know what they need to know. I did a podcast today with a long snapper, Matt Overton, who used to play for the Titans along with a handful of other teams, and he was like, yeah, in the NFL, it's all a need-to-know basis, right? He said he was on the Cowboys last year when there were all those rumors about, is Odell Beckham going to be on the team? And he said it was kind of like, yeah, when you need to know, you'll know. And so they're not sitting there with the players saying, all right, here's what we look for when we're trying to figure out whether or not a college running back is going to be good enough to be able to translate to the NFL. They don't do that. So he gets out of playing, and he goes into college coaching, which, again, that's not personnel. And then he goes from that to the NFL where, yeah, there's some combine stuff and being around guys and how would they fit in a scheme and things like that. But it's still not the same. It's not scouting. And so now he's head coach, and it's like he wants full roster. He has no knowledge base for that with personnel. And Brian Callahan does because, again, being with the Bengals, the coaches are forced into that. So I think it will be easier, and I don't want to sit here and talk about collaboration and all the buzzwords that drive all of us crazy, including me. So I don't want to sit here and say, okay, this is, pure proof this is going to work, but I do think it's going to be helpful to the personnel staff that the coach probably has a greater understanding of what it is that they're looking for. And so when I heard that, I was like, there is some truth to that, even though it is what I felt like was a gargantuan pot shot at the old coach. Oh, by the way, with Dave Canales getting the Carolina job, which good for him. I mean, I think Dave Canales is a good offensive coordinator. With him getting that job in Carolina, where's Vrabel going to coach? He's obviously not coaching the Chargers. Atlanta, it's like they want Bill, but for some reason Bill won't acquiesce to what it will take in order to get the job. And then Seattle, I think Seattle's hiring Dan Quinn. I don't know. I think Vrabel's going to be sitting out this year, and I don't want that. I want Vrabel to coach another team so we can see if he's good or not with somebody else. That's what I want. That's all I want. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Joel says, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Hey, Jared, do you think that comment from Rand means that Vrabel handled the draft and free agent signings? No, I do not think that. I think what he's referring to is that perhaps the collaborative process that we were told about ad nauseum last year that apparently was working out just so well might not have worked out as well as everybody thought it was going to work out. Except for me. Except for me, who said that, wait a minute, this is only going to work out if they win. If they win, it'll be like, you did a good job. No, you did a good job. If they lose, it's going to be like, he did a bad job. And that's apparently what happened. Shocking. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. TD will join us. And We'll get his reaction to the Brian Callahan press conference. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025 if you want to join in. And then we'll hit you, if you want to get in the text line, we'll hit you at the end of the hour that we do with TD. So that'll be at 4:15 that we'll hit those phones or 4 o'clock where we'll hit those phones. 1025-1063 The Game is officially inviting you to our first ever Super Saturday. Join us on Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 p.m. for the fun, family-friendly Soup Fest, benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. Enjoy live music, games for kids, and come sample soup from Mafiosos, which I do love. 615 Chutney, Prince's Hot Chicken, thank you, Ian, Westin Hotel, Jaspers, and more. To purchase tickets and to see participating restaurants, go to thegamenashville.com/soup.
He's been known as a guy who has been able to take quarterbacks and maximize what they do with, like you mentioned before, even to the point of adjusting from Joe Burrow to Jake Browning in the middle of the year. What's kind of been the key to that you found in terms of maximizing what a guy can do?
Communication. Being able to hear what quarterbacks are comfortable with, what they like. The offense is always going to have enough plays. There's always going to be enough scheme. And so you want to know what the quarterbacks feel great about. And Jake was incredible with his ability to communicate what he liked. We put those things in for him so he could have success. And that's part of what fosters a great quarterback room is the communication between myself, the coordinator, the quarterback's coach, and the quarterbacks in the room is knowing what they like and what they do well. And we try to do as much of that as possible. So if a quarterback says, I don't like something, we're not going to use it, we're not going to call it. And that to me is the most critical part. If you have great feedback and great rapport and a great relationship with those guys, they'll do a great job of giving you the information you need to help them and put them in position to be successful. And Jake was fantastic at it and obviously led to quite a bit of success.
Hey, that was Brian Callahan. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. TD, good to see you. How are you?
What's going on? Good to be seen.
Okay, let's get right to it. Your reaction to the press conference today and the Titans hiring of Brian Callahan.
Yeah, I thought he did a solid job. But, this is a guy that I pointed to as he is the guy for the job.
He was the top of TD's big board.
Yeah, and he's been that way for the whole time, throughout the whole coaching search. I told him that, because you look at what he brings to the table, I think it's perfect. And the way that it's perfect, and that's why my first question to him was about the quarterbacks, his catalog of quarterbacks that he's worked with. They're all successful, all different, and he mentioned some of the things that he's going to be able to pull from working with them. And one thing that was consistent throughout the three was the fact that dealing with the locker room, right? You look at Peyton Manning, and one of the things that he said in the past, not today, but in the past, about Peyton Manning was the command that he had of the locker room. And then he talked about Matthew Stafford and just how Stafford had that locker room just really rally around him because of his toughness. And the play where he hurt his shoulder, he came back in, he threw it, and he came off the field, and you thought he was going to die. You know what I mean? Because he was hurt really bad. And then you look at Joe Burrow and how those guys respond to him. So that's going to be something that he's going to really put on Will Levis's plate. And I like how he was able to outline that. So that was a positive. I love what he said about, the offense having the balance there, but willing to do whatever it takes to win. And that's something you saw this Bengals team do. Sometimes they go 11 personnel, 3 receivers, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Other times they go 12 personnel. You see Irv Smith and Drew Sample as the tight ends, and they run the football. There's a lot that they do, and I thought that was really good, just him saying that they'll do what they have to do to win. So those are some things. I thought it was really good. Also, how he said that he, really likes Rand, and he connected with him instantly. And one of the things that, he has said before was well, I'll keep that. I don't know if I could reveal that. But just long story short, they have a really good relationship already, and you need that. And you heard Rand Carthon talk about the communication skills that Callahan brings. So now you have 2 really good communicators. The message should be consistent throughout the whole from top to bottom, so that's a good thing. And, there's a lot of touch points on there. I love the fact that he already sat down with Will Levis and talked to him. And there was something that was lost in there. Will Levis was at the building working out already. I think that's a good thing as well.
So I would say that, as far as like the, what do you think about running this or what do you think about running that? For some reason, I actually kind of laughed when he was asked about defense.
Why?
Because it was basically like, we'll get to that when we get the defensive coach in here, and then we'll know what the defensive coach wants us to be. And I love that because, I like the new guru that just, hey, defensive coach, here's the defense. And that was the vibe I got from him talking about the defense. What'd you think?
I think that's just kind of you wanting the conversation to go a certain way. I didn't get that at all. I think really what it was, look, he has an idea of what he wants to do on defense. And you look at what he said, right? He said that, he wants to have flexibility, and he also can think of some of the defenses that he struggled with. And he said that's what he wants. So rest assured, it isn't just hey, I'm just going to bring whoever in here and you handle it. No, he's going to want to have input on how that works. I didn't see that at all. But I thought it was good that he did mention, the fact that he knows what has given him problems and he wants to implement that into what he presents. So, yeah, I saw it differently.
So I think he's going to hire one of these, and we'll get to the coaching staff in a second, but I think he's going to hire like a defensive coach that's going to be, I don't want to say like Joe Barry was with the Packers, but like that kind of, like, when I say Wade Phillips, everybody thinks I'm talking about an old guy, and I don't think it's going to be pigeonholed to an old guy, but like a Wade Phillips, a Vic Fangio, a Brandon Staley, like one of those guys, here's defense. And I think that's great.
Maybe, but, I mean, the guy that they requested was actually Denard Wilson, right? So, I mean, he is none of what you expressed. So that's the one guy that has been requested already. And I do know Darius Slay because he was the DB coach for the Eagles 2 years ago. And with that, when he was the coach, they were one of the top, if not the top pass defenses. And you look at him with the Ravens last year, and the Ravens were one of the top defenses. And guess who played the Ravens 2 times last year? The Bengals. So he saw that. So I think when you look at that, that's something that you have to consider. I don't know for sure, again, that it's going to be just hey, this is your side of the ball. I mean, if he does go that direction, he coached in Denver with Wink Martindale, and I think you marry Wink Martindale with that offense that he has, which has scored points at a high rate in the past. Last year they had 26 points a game. So I think you marry that with an attacking defense like Martindale's, and I think you got something going because you get off to a lead, and then you allow the guys, and he loves to blitz, so you allow them to rush the passer and attack them when they don't have to worry about the run because they got the lead, and now you got something cooking, and you could possibly force the quarterback to make a bad move. So, that's a veteran guy. You look at James Betcher, who is the LB coach there in Cincinnati, and obviously there's familiarity there too.
Wasn't Betcher like a defensive coordinator candidate a couple years ago?
Yes, he was. He was a guy that was interviewed by Mike Vrabel.
So what'd you think of his answer when you asked about holding people accountable?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I did want to get some information on. Look, I like what he said about establishing the standard and making it known. Like, you set the standard. This is what the basic expectation is, or your non-negotiable, right? And if it's not being adhered to, then you got to call them out. And he went back to what when I asked him about the Bengals Seahawks game, in week 6, and he talked about the offense not living up to that standard, and that's part of the reason why he called them out. So I think that's a good thing, and he's shown that he will do that because you look at last year, there was a point Joe Mixon gave him a lot of credit for calling the offense out on a different occasion. So I like what he said.
He seems like the kind of guy who will get in that ass, but he won't do it very often.
Yeah, and look, in the feedback I got from some of the media and one of the players out there in Cincinnati was that he doesn't do it much, but when he does, you really take notice because it doesn't come consistently. It's like that guy that doesn't speak a lot, but when he does say something, it's like Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry doesn't speak a lot, but when he says something in that locker room, they're like, oh, Derrick has spoken. Let's listen. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, a similar thing that you have with Callahan. And speaking of Henry, on the way here, I heard you say something. You're grading our questions and say we should have asked.
Didn't ask about Henry.
Hey, guess what? That invitation was open to you as well.
Yeah, well, that's at 1:00. We're on there too.
Well, you could come for 15, 20 minutes.
But
listen, I believe in whatever it takes. I believe in whatever it takes. So
hey,
you can come for 15, 20 minutes in the drive here.
But I do want to get to Henry at some point. I want to get to the coaching staff next. 615-737-1025. Did you see how he played the question about his dad? We'll get to that and what it means for the coaching staff. We'll do that next. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
you thought about what it would be like to interview your dad for a job?
No, I have not. I don't know how many sons have interviewed their fathers for jobs, but no, I haven't given much thought to that.
Is he on your list, Brian?
On a list?
For a possible spot.
He's under contract. There's nothing I can say to that either way. So
There you go. That was Brian Callahan today talking about his dad, Bill. I did laugh when, is he on your list? Is he on my list? Like, you know what she meant. It was like that moment, TD, that he was kind of like thinking, okay, what do I say here? You know, make sure that I don't say anything that gets me in trouble.
Buying time is like when you're like, huh? And that's when somebody responds. You can hear.
So what are your thoughts on the coaching staff? And let's go ahead and start with the Bill Callahan thing. Charlie Weiss yesterday was on NFL radio basically saying that even if Bill Callahan is under contract with Cleveland, that in his life, and we know Charlie's been around the game for a long, long time, that nobody would stop their father from working with their son.
I don't know that I get what he's saying, and it sounds good. But what did Amy Adams Strunk say? This is not your father's NFL. Mm-hmm. So things could be a little bit different now. You know what I mean? I don't know that anything's guaranteed. I do like the way he made sure that he avoided any possible tampering or anything like that. So that was wise of him to approach it that way. And, hey, look, man, if he's able to bring Bill Callahan, his father, here, that's obviously going to help the offensive line. But, there's a pretty good consolation prize and one that you've, kind of been pining for over the last month or so or maybe even longer, and that's Mike Munchak. You get him back in. And I know talking with Zack Pillar, it's pretty cool. Throughout the season, I got to just kind of sit down with Zack and learn a lot about the offensive line, and just hearing him instruct me and make me that much smarter in regards to the O-line. I could only imagine what his instructor, Mike Munchak, imparted on him. And look, man, you put that with some of these guys. I mean, look at Jalen Duncan. Yeah, he had a bad season, but, I mean, there's a lot of talent there to work with. And you see what he's done with lesser talent in the past, so I could only imagine how that would go if they brought him in.
Well, I didn't even think it was fair to judge Jalen Duncan on this year.
Of course not. Of course
not.
That
but,
spot. I mean, yeah.
I mean, kind of was what it was, though.
Well,
but
I didn't judge him, so, yeah, I'm in line with you.
But what I would say about, like, the coaching staff, and you know me, I'm not like the coach is always right kind of person. But it's like he's got enough experience where he's worked with so many different teams and on so many different staffs. He probably knows so many different people that, like, he could hire an offensive coordinator who I've never heard of. I'll be okay with it. It's like, now, if they are terrible, then next year we're going to have to look at the coaching staff. But even Munchak, and I think Munchak is a great offensive line coach. I told, everybody that the old man told me that the reason they never had line problems was because Munchak was the one who gave him the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And I feel great about that. But if he doesn't feel comfortable with Mike Munchak, I personally don't want to put pressure on him to hire somebody that I think should be offensive line coach, because I feel like his Rolodex is deep enough to where he really probably has a good understanding of who is a good coach, who would be a good coach, and most importantly, who wouldn't be a good coach.
Well, of course he has that, and he has an idea of who he want to bring in, but at the same time, he's not stupid. Like, he would recognize, hey, look, maybe I don't know Mike Munchak, but I tell you what, I've seen what he's done before. I believe there's a correlation between Munchak and Bill Callahan, so you do have that. So I would imagine that wouldn't be something that would be an issue. And look, man, I don't know why you lying, man. You know darn well if Callahan brings in a guy you never heard of, you're going to be right here on these. Well, no, you won't do that because you seem to be on Callahan's side, unlike Rand Carthon. But
I didn't have a problem with the people he brought in when he brought him in.
You got a personal issue with Rand. Like, stop that, man.
I don't.
Okay.
I got
you call that man incompetent. No matter you blame homelessness, world hunger, everything else on Rand Carthon. Come on, man, stop it.
No,
even when he does something right, is wrong. Oh, no. he gets Will Levis, a future quarterback. You're like, oh well, he should have got him in the first. Bro, he got you a quarterback.
I say to people that say
it's personal.
the Vrabel.
It's cool though. It's personal.
No,
though,
it's
man.
not. People
so
say that about
obvious,
me
too.
and Vrabel. They're like, Vrabel
Well,
got
that
on
too.
you at the. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I had a left tackle problem. Because
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I get mad when the team stinks. I don't care if Vrabel doesn't like me. He clearly doesn't.
It's personal.
It doesn't bother me.
You got with both of them. It's personal.
It's
and
not
it's cool.
personal.
It's cool. But you can't let the personal thing cloud your judgment.
It's not personal.
And impact
It's personnel.
and drive the narratives that you want to push.
It's not personal. It's personnel.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
It's personnel. And Will Levis is a guy that, DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, well,
Well, they
that's
lucked into
good.
DeAndre.
Yeah, they lucked into him.
That nobody else wanted him except for the
Nobody
Patriots, and they wouldn't pay him as much as you would. If not,
Don't
it would
say
have been
you because it
Traylon
ain't
Burks
me.
out there.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm. I don't have a horse in the race.
Like I said yesterday on the program, TD, I said I want to be wrong on Rand Carthon. I do. I want to be
Why
wrong
you
because
always
that means
lying?
the Titans. That's not a lie. I want I want the Titans to
You
be
don't
good.
want to, you not what Rand called.
Yes, I do. I do not want to sit at my parent. My dad is 73 years old.
The
72.
Titans being successful under Rand Carthon would be like a kid eating a Sour Patch Kid.
No.
Where it's sweet, but it's also sour.
No, I'm telling you, my dad is 72, and I love him, and I just want one Super Bowl between, one Titan Super Bowl that's more important than the money and everything else that I could have. I just want one Titan Super Bowl with my dad. So I don't care if it's Rand Carthon or if it's, Johnny Joe. I do not care who gets the Titans that Super Bowl. I want one Super Bowl. So I would not for a second. I've said this before. They could give him the Lombardi trophy and he could say, yeah, and screw you, Jared Stillman. And I wouldn't even care. I'd be so happy that my team won. That's how I feel.
Is Rand responsible for inflation too? I'm just trying to check.
That's why when people, again, and I use Vrabel as the example because everybody apparently has become a Vrabel hater in the last 2 weeks. But when it comes to Vrabel, everybody used to say, you don't like Vrabel because you guys got into it at the press conference. And I never cared about that. In fact, when he said it, I was like, well, this is going to be good on the radio. But more importantly.
It's not personal, but like every time there was a special teams thing, hey, Ian, fire up the.
Yeah, because it was stupid what he said. And I wanted Craig Aukerman out of there because I wanted a good special teams coach because I want my team to be good.
Okay.
I want to be good.
I get it.
I want one Super Bowl, TD. That's all. And if Rand Carthon is the person to deliver it, I'll be happy. I don't care who delivers the Super Bowl. But
there you go,
I'm a little nervous right now. But I do like to coach now, so at least there's that. What were we talking about?
I don't remember.
Coaching staff. What do you think of offensive coordinator?
I don't know what direction they're going to go, frankly. Thomas Brown interviewed with another team. I forget who it was. But, look, you got Troy Walters, who's clearly going to be in the mix. He's a receiver coach. For the Bengals. So that message is going to be consistent, right? And there's no, hey, look, this is, what we're looking to do. You could bring him in. You got Brad Cragthorpe, who was the assistant QB coach. You could bring him in. The guy who you were ahead of everybody with when you mentioned Dan Pitcher, he clearly, is out of the running now that he's the Bengals OC. So those are a couple. Listen, I wouldn't be opposed to Charles London getting a job, frankly. That would be good. And just to give you a name, now this isn't an indication that I've gotten or anything like that, but it's a guy I feel should absolutely be mentioned, and that's Pep Hamilton. And there aren't really philosophical similarities or anything like that, but I know Pep Hamilton, what he did with the Chargers and Justin Herbert as a rookie, getting him ready and having him get thrown into the mix when Tyrod Taylor had that issue, in with the Chargers. I think Pep Hamilton should absolutely get consideration also. And, hey, I mean, look, Eric Bieniemy is another name that I would put in there. And these are guys who are proven to be successful.
What do you make of him saying they're going to be patient on the coaching staff? Because in my view, the Senior Bowl is next week.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they always talk about how there's coaching interviews at the Senior Bowl.
Yes.
But I also would like, to have my offensive line coach in place when I get to the Senior Bowl to look at you know what I'm saying? Like to look at the prospects and everything.
I get what you're saying. And on the surface, that does make sense. But the good thing is, typically, by the time, even through the Senior Bowl, you don't really have a lot of like the coaches are starting to play catch up, but there isn't really. Yeah, it's great to have a coach there and get to see some of these guys in person, in practice. That's never a bad thing, but I don't think it's as bad as what you may be alluding to, because as long as you have your scouts there, your personnel folks there, obviously Chad Brinker, Rand Carthon, Anthony Robinson, you want to have those guys, your Midwest scout, your North-South, et cetera. You want those people there, and a lot of the information and stuff is gathered from them, to be frank, and that's kind of like something that's funneled into the position coaches, and then they go out and take it from there. So it would be good to have them there, but, as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of interviewing and getting to know process that happens down there in Mobile. I can't wait to be down there, to be honest with you.
TD, Mel Kiper's mock draft is out. He has the Titans going with a very, very popular player.
Mm-hmm.
What do we make of Brian Callahan, and what maybe that may tell us one way or another? We'll do that next. TD is with us, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, we have some breaking news, TD.
Holla at me.
Adam Schefter reporting the Falcons are hiring Raheem Morris
Ooh.
as their head coach.
Woo! Shout out to Raheem, man.
Good for him, but
yes.
What the hell, Belichick? I thought he had the job, and he must have blown it.
There was just something that he must not have been bending to for them. And I wonder this also, when you look at the front office and the people upstairs, so to speak, I wonder if there was a degree of, yeah, man, he's going to come in and just try to turn stuff around, and we done built this up. Like, there's a lot of talent on that roster. A lot. So I think, I think I like this move. He just better bring in somebody that's on point offensively. There's a lot of talent on there, so they have to maximize it.
Well, that screams Zack Robinson to me.
Ooh,
as the offensive coordinator, because Robinson then goes kind of like Matt LaFleur. He's going to call the plays and run that offense like LaFleur, Bobby Slowick, and then McVay gets his next guy ready, but Morris has like that, and it's the same system with Arthur having run it. And, again, the people above Raheem, they need to find themselves a quarterback. And it could be, to me, kind of like what Baker was to Tampa Bay, like a guy who's not an A1 starter, but is a starter, and I think they could be in pretty decent shape.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, here's the thing. Tannehill would be – I wonder if Tannehill, that's a possibility. You look at the draft. Where do they pick? Where does the Falcons – actually, the Falcons pick right after the Titans, if I'm not correct, not mistaken, right? They pick at 8th. I'm pretty sure. Falcons
I'll take your word for it.
Draft spot. Look, trade up. I mean, their roster is stacked. Yeah, they picked 8th. Their roster is stacked to the point where they don't need to use a whole lot of draft picks on play. Like, they have enough talent there. They could move up, and that could help the Titans. They move up and then draft a quarterback, whether it's Jalen Daniels, or let's say they move up and let's say they flip with the Titans. I don't know. There's a lot of things that could happen, and this could push another quarterback up in there and push one of these top-flight tackles or receivers down to the Titans.
Mm-hmm. I go back to Belichick. You're right. Ooh. I mean, I think Rich McKay, who has been attached to the hip with Arthur Blank since he kind of got out of running the team in Tampa Bay, has been kind of the right-hand man there. I think Rich McKay wanted no part of Belichick, just because the Belichicks, the Parcells, those guys have such a history for just running that guy out of there, like Bobby Greer.
Yeah, no, I get it. And Terry Fontenot, I like the move. I thought, because Slowick was supposed to, and that's your guy, he was supposed to interview for a second time, wasn't he?
Yes. I think he did interview for a second time.
Oh, he did.
And then after the second time, I guess they decided, it wasn't good enough. Let's hire Raheem Morris.
Hey, man, he was there before. They got that H-Town in him. They want that old thing back.
Well, and I wonder, too, like McKay, like if the relationship with Morris from Tampa Bay probably, that was comfortable with that. But again, two thoughts now. Now that the Falcons and Panthers are off the table, where's Vrabel go?
What's left? Seattle, right?
Yeah.
And that's Dan Quinn. In Washington, I haven't seen – I don't believe he's connected to Washington. I don't believe so. But I think Washington goes with your original guy, Ben Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. And they get Drake May, and that'll be interesting. Or Jaden Daniels. You see Mel Kiper's mock. He had him getting Jaden Daniels, I believe. So
Vrabel's going to be sitting on the sidelines this year?
Hey. I mean,
boo!
Sometimes it works that way.
I want Vrabel coaching somewhere because it'll be like A.J. Brown Part 2, except maybe – not as painful for the fans.
Speaking of A.J. Brown Part 2, a quick Senior Bowl preview. Xavier Legette from South Carolina. You talk about playing styles and just body movements and stuff. I'll repost it on Twitter, but so similar to A.J. Brown. It's crazy.
We need to create a 33rd team so that Belichick can coach this year. Like, I don't want him coaching my team, but I want him coaching. And Belichick's not going to pass Shula, is he?
I mean, he may get a job somewhere, but again, it goes back to what Amy Adams Strong. This is not what she said. This is not my father's NFL.
It's not her father's NFL, and if there's anything that the last 4 years have proven, it is the idea that today, Because I do think Bill, I don't want to say was ahead of everybody as much as we all thought in the 2000s, but Bill was, innovative, and they were ahead of it and everything else. But the last 4 years, I think the game has kind of passed Bill up a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that is the case. But, it is what it is, man.
I am bummed out. I really care about this for some reason.
Man,
I didn't think I did.
You'd be all right.
I will be all right. But and then Vrabel not coaching anywhere, I don't like that either. I want Vrabel to be coaching a team so that we can see if it's going to be an unmitigated disaster or if Vrabel wins a bunch of games and everybody here gets mad. And I think it's just everybody wants the new young, they want, which is what I wanted, the guru. Mm-hmm. Although Raheem Morris is neither of those things.
The Rams defense has been good. Don't.
No. But like as far as like the offensive guru type pants with the latte,
not offensive. No.
And then, I think Raheem Morris was kind of thrown into a bad situation in Tampa Bay. I don't really hold that against him.
Yeah, and still, had a solid first year. Things began to – and then the next year after they fire him, right, they go and spend $100+ million on free agency. It's crazy.
You know what's crazy, though, too, for Vrabel, is that I think he'll be, like, either the hottest candidate in next year's cycle or the second hottest candidate, because there will be teams that will say, well, Mike Vrabel's out there. For any team that wants to fire their coach, the immediate reaction is, well, who are you going to get? And then they'll say, well, we'll get Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
But old buddy Ryan Day at Ohio State might have to.
Yeah, that's one I thought of, too.
Ooh,
that's one I thought of,
because he is on the hot seat.
Yeah, that's one I thought of as well. That's a good one.
You think Vrabel would be good in college?
Yeah, I do. Because his coaching style, I do, but with NIL coming and stuff like that, like it's a little bit different as far as like how they respond to tough coaching. You know what I mean? But yeah,
I do feel like he's the kind of guy where like 3 years with him might be enough, and then you're ready to move on to.
Yeah. But you had teased Mel Kiper's draft. Like, let's make sure.
Yeah, he did. He had them taking Joe Alt, but we do have to get the phones for TD.
Yeah.
But again, the breaking news: Raheem Morris, the head coach in Atlanta, a stunner on Raheem Morris. No Belichick. Wow. But we will get to the phones with TD. He did have Mel Kiper has the Titans taking Joe Alt at 7, the tackle out of Notre Dame, who you did a great breakdown on.
Thank you.
But I do wonder in the back of my mind, like I think one of these really good receivers is going to be available. And Brian Callahan, when they were at the Bengals, not that he was the decision maker or that it was an apples to apples comparison, but they did go Chase over Sewell in the 21 draft. And I wonder if he's in a similar spot. What do you think about that when it's like a Dunze or Neighbors, but there's a tackle out there? What do you think?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I missed that.
So if Brian Callahan's sitting there and it's Alt or Fashanu or, they're sitting there with that tackle at 7, but a Roma Dunze or a Malik Neighbors or somebody like that is sitting out there, could he say, hey, in Cincinnati, we went receiver over the tackle, and that was big for us?
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's something that I wanted to ask about, but I'm going to ask that either at the Senior Bowl or at the pre-draft presser, because that is something. Apparently that took like a 90-day process for them to arrive upon that decision of Chase over Penei Sewell, and both of those teams benefited from it. And you could very well be in that situation where it's Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt, and you're weighing that against Roma Dunze or your guy Malik Neighbors, so it's like, okay, what way do you go about? Like, do you think you could go Joe Alt and Xavier Worthy or Xavier Legette in the second round, or do you want to rather go Roma Dunze and Neighbors or Neighbors along with a guy like a Jordan Morgan from Arizona in the second round if he lasts? So it's tough. Like, you really have to do a good job of projecting, and that's a part of the draft process that people don't really talk about, the team's ability to project where teams are going to select who and allow that to impact how they go ahead and pick, with an idea of what will be available to them in the next round.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get the phones for TD. 615-737-1025. We'll hit them next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. TD Power Hour. TD is with us. TD, do you have a thought, or do you want to go right to the phones? Questions for TD at 615-737-1025.
To the phones, baby.
Phone lines. Richard from Winchester is up first. Richard, you're on with TD.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, I am so happy for Raheem. I'm just glad we got some diversity among these coaching hires, man. Because it just wasn't happening for us. I mean, you got the New England and you got what's his name, Pierce, but those are fourth tires. But check this out, Belichick. From what I gather, I was keeping up with the Atlanta thing, and Arthur Blank wanted him, but it seems like the front office you were gonna have some resignations there that Blank, were gonna be surprised by because they didn't want Belichick. I mean, it was a split decision down the middle. The front office did not want Belichick. Arthur Blank did. That's from what I gather.
Thank you, Bill.
No, Bill's right. That's what I touched on, right? That I felt that could probably be the case. So, yeah, good stuff, man.
What did you make of, because when he brought up the diversity hire thing, I do want your opinion on the Keyshawn Johnson thing.
It's foolishness.
About Brian Callahan.
It's foolishness. And, it's interesting because I fought this fight in the group chat that I have for, a personal one. And it's like, look, man, they sent 11 invitations out. 6 of them were black. Thomas Brown made it to the second round. I mean, look, what if he just went with the guy that he liked? And it's no mystery that Brian Callahan was the best fit. I think that's the bottom line. And, this is just what you have with national TV. And, look, I'm a huge Keyshawn Johnson fan to the point where, if my oldest daughter was a boy, his name probably would have been Keyshawn. You know what I mean? Like, I love Keyshawn Johnson.
Sure.
I have his book. I love him. But I can't get down with you on that. As he used to say on when he was on ESPN, and he'd hold the hands up and be like, come on, man. That's what I'm saying back to him. Come on, man. Stop.
The one thing that I hate this because it's like nobody even wanted to talk to Eric Bieniemy this cycle.
It's unfortunate. And low-key, you look at what my man was able to do, Sam Howell down there, and he threw a good amount of picks, but at one point he was leading the league in passing yards. He passed for over 4K. Sam Howell.
I mean, I don't think anybody could have done better with Sam Howell. If that makes any sense. Tommy is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. Tommy, you're on with TD.
Yes. I'm calling in to say that I appreciate your show, but you guys are always making excuses for these new coaches.
What do we need to excuse? He hasn't even coached a game.
And these guests, my
Tommy,
God.
Make a point, please. All right. Let's go to Jody, who's up next here on this says Derrick Henry. Jody, you're on with TD.
What's up, guys? Hey, everybody said it was a nail in the coffin for Derrick Henry when Vrabel left, that Derrick Henry wouldn't be coming back. But your opinion, don't you think that with Callahan being an offensive coach, maybe they can do some things around Derrick Henry? Derrick Henry would be excited about this. I mean, I just want to hear your opinion, and appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Jody.
I like what Jody said, and here's the thing, right? One of the things that Callahan highlighted was, hey, don't get it twisted. Like, we're going to be physical. When we have to run the football, we'll run the football. That's what he said. And I think when you look at that offense that he has, there are times, as I mentioned earlier, where they go 12 personnel, or they've at times went 13, shoe to shoe, ran the football. Joe Mixon had some productive years, and Joe Mixon is one of those physical backs that you want to get the football to 20 to 25 times, and they did that at times. So it's really, I think it's going to come down to them getting that number right as far as the money is concerned, and just being able to have Derrick Henry be invested in, okay, yeah, I may get the ball 10 to 15 times, but then there's another time I may get it 25 to 30, and they just have to find that balance there.
I also think, I hate to say this because I think Derrick's still a really good player.
Yeah.
but I don't think the market's going to – I think he thinks he's going into the market where teams are going to offer him some money. And, I don't think there's going to be a team, even though I think he can help a lot of these teams, that is going to want to pay Derek the money that he probably can get here.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right with that. You have to wonder, you know what I mean? The Ravens are obviously a match. The Cowboys would be intriguing, so those are a couple teams. But, yeah, I think just all best page truly, or you know what I mean? So there's a lot to consider.
James is up next here on the TD Power Hour. What's up, James?
Hey, Jared. TD, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing awesome, man. How are you, James?
Good, man. Like I said before, I love this hour. This is one of my favorite parts of Jared's show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Having said that, I would like to ask you what I don't know a lot about Callahan, but what we all know and what I do know is the situation you dealt with the Bengals offensive line.
Yeah.
And we know that Burrow got sacked 9 times in that playoff game against the Titans, where Tannehill, I think, threw 3 interceptions in that game. But that being said, it seems like that line got fixed pretty well. What kind of challenges is he going to have fixing that, and how much carte blanche, how much, I should say probably how much leeway do you think Rand's going to give him in decision-making when it comes to fixing that putrid offensive line? And I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
No, that's another really good question. The callers are on point today, except for Tommy. I don't know what his deal was. But that question is a good one because you look at free agency and you look at the draft. We talked about the Joe Olufashanu. On Talking with TD this week, we had Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and there's a prospect that he said has more upside than both of them. You have to listen to find out who. That's the teaser. But at the same time, the draft will be an opportunity. I think Robert Hunt, the guard out of Miami, free agency would be a good option. The Patriots have a guy, I can't pronounce his last name, but they have an offensive lineman that's coming
Michael
available.
Onwenu?
Yeah, there you go, right there. Olawenu. How you say it?
Onwenu.
So Michael Onwenu is another one. So there are opportunities to address this position. He may get tagged. We'll see. But, he going out, he expressed the feeling that he wasn't going to be back. But I think really what Brian Callahan said in regards to it being a full team problem, not a particular position problem. Yes. And how many times have we talked about this? Well, hey, look, man, receivers got to get open quicker. Or get open, period. And then at the same time, the quarterback, there's sometimes, look, man, you got to get rid of the ball. But then at other times, it's like, hey, man, you can't let the quarterback get sacked in 2.3 seconds. So it's a joint, and then it's on the play caller too. Hey, bunch formation, switch releases, quick routes, using different things like that to get guys open quickly. It is an organizational problem and not just an individual unit problem. So I think that shows understanding. Obviously, in Cincinnati, there were issues with the offensive line. Joe Burrow got walloped time after time after time, but they found ways to be successful anyway.
So I actually, for some reason, I have anxiety and worries about a lot of things in life.
I know.
I am not as worried about them fixing the offensive line as I think people would expect me to be worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because I feel comfortable that they're going to get a good line coach in here, whether it's Bill Callahan, Mike Munchak, or somebody else that Brian Callahan, would think is going to be a good line coach. But I also think that they probably learned from their mistakes last year about, this idea of trying to fit something in there. It's like, no, let's pay full price if we have to. And let's make sure that we bring somebody in here that we know can play right tackle, for instance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to address the position. I tell you what, George Fant is a free agent. There goes another one that, hey, this year, buckle up and pay him. If that, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So there are options. Typically, flawless offensive linemen don't hit the O-line, or the free agency. So if you got somebody that's on the market, there's some kind of reason, and you just got to be able to sort through that and say, hey, this guy could help me.
I think it's got to be like looking for the Ben Joneses of this year's class.
Great point. Yeah.
Like the way they added him.
Mm-hmm.
Matt is up next here. You're on with TD. Matt, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
All right. So with Callahan coming in, what are the odds of them possibly scoring T. Higgins to come in and help this receiving core in the offseason? Thanks, guys.
That's the magic question right there. I think the odds are slim just simply because of the fact that I feel the Bengals are going to tag him. they're going to have to tag him, and that's the situation there. Now, Terry McCormick, he's actually mentioned a free agent in Jonah Williams that could be a guy that they end up getting. I've mentioned Tyler Boyd, the receiver, Jonah Williams, the right tackle, but those are options that may follow Callahan to here.
Thank you, Matt. I think Higgins could be acquirable, but it would be with a trade because they are probably going to tag him.
You trade a first-round pick and, go $20 million
and
per year.
The money. I mean, Higgins is probably looking at – I'm thinking – what do you think? I'm thinking $28 million probably.
Is big money and a first-round pick, period.
That, I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot. TD, we got more phones for you if you want to take them.
Hey, absolutely. I'm for
All right.
people.
TD sticks with us. We'll get to your phones for TD. Again, recapping the Brian Callahan press conference. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Twice Daily. I love Twice Daily. They want to send you to Italy. Who wants to go to Italy? That's right. Twice Daily's trying to do that. Buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app to get entered to win. Every sub is a chance to win. Mobile-ordered Italian subs count as 2 times the entries. Visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more information. Twice Daily has you covered with made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. Download the Twice Daily app today and join their loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily where you earn points and save money with every single visit. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, you know I love them. Twice Daily, fresh all day. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour and a bonus segment of TD answering your Titans questions. TD, phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Titans in Truth, Chris is up first here. Chris, go ahead.
Man, I appreciate the VIP treatment, gentlemen. First of all, TD, my brother, welcome back. You know, I didn't get to say that before, but, man, it's good to have you back, everything. And much blessings to you. But, you know, we've all talked about the offensive side of the ball, and I'm very excited about that. But my question for both of you gentlemen is, looking to the other side, to the defensive side of the ball, what should we look for as far as a defensive coordinator? You know, maybe do we go with the young hotshot guy that maybe could, you know, I see we're bringing in Denard Wilson possibly as a defensive coordinator, or do you go with maybe the more experienced defensive coordinator like maybe a Dan Quinn or a Wink Martindale, and you have some longevity on that side of the ball as well? So kind of want to get your thoughts on what we could do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And my guy, Chris, my guy, he's coming back from a cruise too, man. I watched some of the videos. I'm not a Sigma, but I would have loved to have been on that cruise. But anyhow, when you look at what he mentioned about defense, I definitely feel, as we talked about earlier, you have to go with an attacking defense, because I look at this like, hey, your objective is going to be to get out to an early lead, allow your defense to pin their ears back and attack and force turnovers and keep loading that wagon, so to speak. So I think Wink Martindale would be excellent for that. I'm curious how Denard Wilson is going to be, because, as I mentioned, he's been a part of the top two pass defenses, the top pass defenses over the last 2 years. So those are some. I just want to see like what he brings out as far as his Rolodex of people to speak to.
And I noticed that Denard Wilson crossed paths, I believe, with Rand Carthon with the Rams.
Yeah. That is true. So you got that familiarity there. And remember, in that interview, it turned from a Q&A to, hey, this is how our visions match. So there's a common thread.
So, I don't know Brian Callahan, but I don't feel like they're going to have a hard time working together. With Vrabel, they kept saying it was good, but I just, I don't think Vrabel works great with a lot of people. I don't fear that at all here.
No, not at all. It's a good situation.
Let's go to Bo, who's up next and has been waiting patiently. Thank you for calling. Hey, Bo.
Bo knows calling.
Hey, Jared. Hey, TD. Hey, Ian. How y'all doing?
What's up, man?
Well, I just had a question or two. I was wondering, with the Callahan hire, I don't know if this is I want to know if this is an oversimplification. I've been saying that if Will Levis turns out to be closer to Jake Browning, then Callahan will be what he will be. If he is Joe Burrow, or the comparison I've heard from you, Jared, or someone else is Justin Herbert, then we're going to really love the coaching of Callahan. I just really want to know whether that's an oversimplification, and if any other free agent targets that we might see, big names that could come to Nashville to play with a young offense that probably isn't an attraction right now, but
sure,
could be somewhere that someone wants to play.
Yep, thank you, Bo. Let's get to the Levis thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know. I think that's simplifying it a bit. That's a wide range from Jake Browning to Justin Herbert. But I think, the key, and this is something I always say, the key is getting the best Will Levis. And that's what they have to do. And I just look at the past experience he has and marrying that to Levis, I think that is going to be something. But you have to have him surrounded by talent. 'Cause I don't care how good a player is. If he doesn't have talent surrounding him and his name isn't Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, I don't think that player is going to be successful. So you got to get some players in here to help.
So on the Levis thing, I think Levis has a lot of talent. I think he cares a lot. I think he's tough. And I think he's smart, but he just turns the ball over. And turns the ball over maybe too simple, but he does, has some plays he'd like to have back, and he gets
reckless.
hurt.
Yeah.
And it's the job of Brian Callahan to keep him healthy and to work those things out of him. And that's going to be what goes a long way for whether or not this team's going to be good. Demetrius is up next here on the program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Demetrius?
What's up, guys? TD, I love hearing you on the radio, man. I think it's the best hour of the day.
Hey, appreciate you, good brother.
No doubt, man. My question is, man, what do you guys think about? I feel like we got to fix the offensive line. So my thought is, what do you guys think about moving Skoronski to the right and drafting Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, put him on the left? And also, I'm going to leave you with this. Jared, I think it is personal, man. I ain't going to listen.
I don't understand how people think
Let's
personal.
not listen. You'll have plenty of time to address that. You'll have plenty of time.
I don't feel the need to, other than when people say it, and then I'm like, it's not the case.
Okay, that's just a feeling. Just a feeling. But I don't know, Demetrius, I would say keep Skoronski at left guard. You draft Joe Alt and Taylor Lewan, busting with the boys, Will Compton. They're going to sell a lot more run left hats. That's the way I look at it, because you have those two guys together, and now you got cornerstones for years to come. That left side is taken care of. And the right side, I mean, look, there are other guards in this draft later on as you could get. There are centers too, and I know, Jared, that's an area that you want to address, and I don't blame you. Georgia has a good center that'll be coming out. I believe he'll be down there in the Senior Bowl. And there's tackles too. So I think eventually you could build this line up, or even as we mentioned, the free agent, right? George Fant, bring him in.
Sure.
There are options that you could do.
And I think the interior offensive line in free agency seems to be stacked a little bit higher than perhaps the tackle position.
We talked about Robert Hunt, right?
Yeah.
Boom.
Or Dotson with the Rams.
Yeah. And don't forget, look, Dylan Radins, he played solid football, towards the end of the year at right tackle. So that's an option still.
Dylan Radins was actually passable at the end of the year, except that he false started too much.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's something you coach out of somebody
Hold
or
your water.
if they just.
That's what they tell you. Hold your water.
I don't know what that is. Evan's up next here on the program. Thank you for waiting. Evan, go ahead.
Hey, what's up? Big fan of the show. I've actually never called in before, but thought I would call in today.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, so just quick question. Special teams has been a weakness on this team for a long time, especially under Vrabel, but I feel like they haven't had a good special teams.
It looked like teams. Oh, go ahead, Evan. You cut out.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, is there a special teams guru on the market that you could see them targeting? Or because I couldn't imagine they would just elevate.
Sure.
Have now.
And sure, also, Evan. Thank you for your call. TD, your thoughts on the special teams?
Tom Quinn is a guy I would look at bringing back. I mean, he's very well tenured. I think Anthony Levine needs to be in the mix as well. He was a guy. They called him CoCap in Baltimore because he was a pro bowler and their best special teams player. He's a guy that I would look at bringing back and have him in the mix. If they go running back coach, Deuce Staley is a guy that is the running back coach, but he also doubled. I watched him firsthand work with returners there with the Eagles. So that's one. And then he had touched on kicker. At least that was up on the board, kicker. Just a quick thing. They did have Cade York here for a visit. And you remember him, as the practice squad guy. And he's a guy that I liked out of LSU, had the issues in Cleveland, but still a lot of talent there. So that is someone they may bring back.
You know what, kicker? I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm watching Michael Badgley hit 59-yarders in a playoff game.
Must be not. No. The one you watch is that daggone Justin Tucker.
Oh,
that's the one.
Well, yes.
Jared, but, no lie. In Ravens practice, I saw him hit a 70-yarder twice. Yeah, the dude is a daggone robot.
That man. Is. I've seen Michael Badgley in 6 different training camps for the Titans miss about 55 kicks from the 35-yard line. And now he's out there in the playoffs hitting from 54. I'm like, how do
you're fresher under pressure.
Jules and Franklin's up next. Jules, you're on with TD.
Hey, guys. Jared, love the show. Been listening for 4 years now. So, TD, I got a simple question for you. What do you think Amy herself saw in Callahan as a coach that made her want to bring him in? Yeah. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks, Jules.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jules. And I look at it this way. What she saw in him was his ability to work with quarterbacks, and it's proven. Anytime you got a guy like Peyton Manning that has an offensive assistant come to his Hall of Fame ceremony, that says a lot. And you look at what Matthew Stafford has said about him as far as the preparation and the help that he's had. I haven't heard Derek Carr say anything. But you look at Joe Burrow, also, obviously it's a different role, the OC, as compared to quarterback coach or offensive assistant, but that's another thing. So I think that's what they saw. But also another thing that they saw in him is the fact Cincinnati is they run that like a small business, right? And there's – Jared, you've touched on this, right? The coaches scouting, it's so collaborative. And I know that word is just can we just put it to rest? But – That's the best word to describe what was going on in Cincinnati, and they saw that, and that mirrors the model of what they want to have here as far as everybody in the group think, the synergy, everybody working together, having that common goal. And if you notice, that's what Brian Callahan said, having a common goal and working towards that, and that's the only way that it could be successful. So those are the things that I believe and I'm pretty sure are what stood out to him. And then also the preparation and the ability, as Rand Carthon said, was to articulate his vision and like draw it and then explain it and those types of things.
Do you think that they went into this with like a coaching board and had Callahan at the top of the list, or do you think that
I do.
When they went through the interviews they were like, yeah, this is the guy? It's like love at first sight.
I think going into this they had an idea that he would be there, but that interview, that initial one, I think was when it really was like, yeah, we're going to talk to some other guys, but I think this is the one. You know what I mean? I really feel that way.
Sure. TD, great stuff as always. I'm sure talking with TD is going to be in-depth. I know we got Ben Baby, who covers the Bengals, your counterpart at ESPN, all on Brian Callahan. And next week, the Senior Bowl.
I'll be there. I'll be here, too.
TD, great stuff. Appreciate you as always.
All right, much love.
Teron Davenport joining us on the program, as he always does. A little bonus coverage there with TD. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get some more of your phones. But coming up next, I have been known to have been wrong at times in the past. And there is one coach in particular that I'm thinking maybe I got it wrong. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I would like to thank the Cincinnati Bengals organization. Mike Brown, who is probably one of the greatest men that I've ever met. I'll get it together in a second, don't worry. Katie and Troy Blackburn, their daughters Elizabeth and Caroline, and Duke Tobin and his staff. They gave me an incredible opportunity to grow, and they were patient, and they invested in me, and I'll forever be grateful for that. The next one, again, you can see how much these people mean to me. I'll get it together. All right. And then probably most importantly, Zack Taylor. He's a great friend. He's been an incredible mentor, and he's a fantastic football coach. Thank you for everything.
That was Brian Callahan today, and you see how emotional. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, it was artwork to see the emotions from the coach. And I'm also not going to say like, what are you doing up there about to fall into tears? And no, I get it. I get it. And when it comes to Brian Callahan and is talking about Zack Taylor, I actually am starting to think that maybe I was a little too hard on Zack Taylor. You know, when it came to Zack Taylor, I just thought he was some stooge in Cincinnati because when they won the division in 2021, he had a moment like that where he started like welling up in tears about what all they accomplished and everything else. And I'm like, dude, you won the division. Like, the division. I mean, it's great. It's great to win a division, but like, what are you all, whatever. And then meanwhile, Burrow's just cool as a cucumber saying whatever. And I also didn't give Zack Taylor any credit at the time because I felt like, oh yeah, all the success Cincinnati's having is because of Joe Burrow. Duh. I mean, no disrespect to Ed Orgeron, but I think we know what kind of coach he is, and he won a national championship when he had Joe Burrow as his quarterback. I mean, I thought that Joe Burrow was the kind of guy who could take a bad coach like Adam Gase and even elevate him. Like, you could be the worst coach in the world, and it doesn't matter because you got Joe Burrow. And so a couple years ago in the playoffs, when the Titans were getting ready to play the Bengals, I was like, oh, Zack Taylor, whatever. That guy's a stooge. He's a passenger. Joe Burrow's driving the car, and there's nothing to that whatsoever. And I just always felt that way. And then the DeMar Hamlin thing happened. And when DeMar Hamlin went down and all of that chaos out there on the field, Zack Taylor was a big part of kind of getting the game canceled. And I believe he drove Sean McDermott, I think, to the hospital, to go check on DeMar Hamlin. And I think it was Taylor that was like, we're not playing. Like, we're not with these guys in the state they're in. And the way that was handled, I thought was done tremendously by a head coach. Then Jake Browning played this year. When Zack Taylor had Joe Burrow, it's easy to say, well, yeah, they win these games because they got Joe Burrow. Just like, oh, yeah, Bruce Arians. I mean, he's fine. I don't think Bruce Arians is a great coach, but he's got Tom Brady, went Super Bowl. Good for you, Bruce, but we know that was Tom. But then when Joe Burrow got hurt, after I had dubbed the Bengals my second team since the Titans had lost like 7 games and I had officially given up on the season, so I needed to find a new team to root for, I decided I'd root for the Bengals. And I think it was like 5:50 on a Thursday that I decided I'd root for the Bengals. And then on Thursday Night Football, Joe Burrow broke his wrist. And so that ended that. But when I watched Jake Browning play quarterback, I was really, really impressed because Jake Browning was a guy who had kicked around on practice squads and around the league. And the Bengals don't take the backup quarterback position seriously anyways. It's Brandon Allen and Jake Browning and, Johnny Joe. And so I figured it wasn't going to be, and I actually was really, really impressed. And I started to think, no, maybe this Zack Taylor, he might be onto something here. He might be, he might actually be a pretty good coach. And then just to see how much Brian Callahan respects Zack Taylor And then even Rand Carthon brought up Zack Taylor as when he was thanking everybody who was a part of the search, and it was basically all the people that are his bosses, like Burke Niel and Amy Adams Strunk and Kenneth Adams, and thank you to this one and thank you to that one. And then it was like, and I really want to thank Zack Taylor, who was a big part of this, and Zack's this, Zack's that. And I'm just like, man, maybe Zack Taylor is a really good coach. I was told that when the Bengals had that opening after the 2018 season, that they thought they were going to hire Eric Bieniemy. Like, they thought that was going to be their coach. And then they had their interviews, and Bieniemy apparently didn't interview very well from what I was told, but Taylor knocked it out of the park. And, at that point in time, that was when I was still anti-guru coaches. And so I was like, so this guy's just riding shotgun with Sean McVay, and he's going to be head coach of the Bengals. And then they started off so badly that I felt justified in thinking that he wasn't a very good coach. And now I'm starting to think he's a pretty good coach. And not only that, other than this year, they happen to beat the Titans every time they play them. I remember that game, that divisional round playoff game, and I was like, oh, yeah, coaching matchup. Titans have that one 10 times over. And now I'm starting to think about, like, is it an accident that the first time they played in Cincinnati, even when the Bengals were still horrible, they got beat? And then they played in the playoffs and they got beat. And then they played last year and they got beat. And then they did play this year and the Titans absolutely freaking schooled them. But maybe Zack Taylor's a good coach. And maybe I just was too much of a jerk to realize it. One texter says, did LaFleur or Arthur Smith get that emotional when talking about Vrabel when they got their head coaching jobs? I promise you LaFleur didn't get that emotional, just from what everybody knows about that relationship, where they're playing each other and they're trying to run up the score on one another. I think that probably tells you all you needed to know about that. So maybe I was wrong about Zack Taylor. Maybe he's a good coach. And, again, that's where the game's going with the guru. So I'm going to try to not call coaches stooges anymore unless I think they're really, truly being a stooge. 615-737-1025. You think that's a resolution I can keep? Ian?
I love the growth. Growth, yes, please.
615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones here. Stillman and Company, we continue along. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been taking great care of my home for years. They will be taking care of my home very soon, as I will be getting some electrical work done. And, of course, there's no hesitation. I mean, it's Hiller. That's it. Go to my phone. Schedule it. Bang. They're going to be here. It's awesome. I absolutely love them. 100% satisfaction. Happy you'll be, or the service is free. And trust me, you will be happy, because I'm happy every time I use Hiller at my home. They are just the best. And they offer true transparency pricing, which means that Hiller will line item what every part of the job is up front, so homeowners like me and you can easily understand what we're paying for and why. For example, they itemize the parts and labor separately. No hidden fees, no added costs, no surprises when you get your bill. That's what I love about Hiller. They're the best. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Specifically working with Joe Burrow, a younger quarterback, I wonder if some of those things might translate to Will, as opposed to some of the veteran quarterbacks that you work with.
Yeah, it was a great process to go through. I think, and again, even with Jake making his first couple starts in the NFL, even though he'd been in the league a few years, those processes you learn a lot from. You learn how to put the game plan together that suits them. You learn how they learn, and you learn what they like to do, and how do you highlight those things. And then while you highlight those things, how do you work on the weaknesses with it? So I've learned a lot from being a part of Joe's development from day one to now. Obviously, he's a great player, and a lot of that development he played a large part in as well. So those guys are impressive people to be around, but you take the lessons of how you coach that, and you look back and go, was that good or bad? And I think a lot of it was good. There's some things that I would do differently that I'm looking forward to doing more as I get going with Will.
There you go. That's Brian Callahan. And I do think, I was thinking about this today when I was brushing my teeth. Ian, have you noticed that I think about a lot of things while I'm brushing my teeth?
Ryan Hartman, first-round pick.
First-round pick? But just for some reason when I'm brushing my teeth, I think. So anywho, so I was brushing my teeth this morning, and I was thinking about, people that get excited about Joe Burrow and that equaling Will Levis because you're getting Joe Burrow's coach. And so it's and I'm like, it almost never really works out like that, right? It's never we're getting, Mike Heimerdinger came from the Broncos, right? Did you get John Elway at quarterback? Probably not. And McNair was good. And he was the one that oversaw McNair's development like that, he and Les Steckel. But, you didn't get John Elway. You know what I mean? So it's not like with Will Levis, I'm thinking, oh, you're getting Joe Burrow. But I do think the one thing that Brian Callahan's experience, and he kind of talked about that today when he talked about his experience with Peyton Manning, the one thing I do think that he's going to be able to do, and you can't do this all the time, but you can do this, is reference those guys when Levis needs a little bit of encouragement. And what I mean by that is I remember when I was a junior in college, and the sport administration program at Louisville is a great program. In fact, it's one of the top in the country for what it is. And I have a lot of anxiety, and I was very anxious about my future, junior, senior year, something like that. And so I was talking to Dr. Hums, who's one of the top, one of the chairs there at Louisville. And I was talking about how nervous I was about my future in broadcasting, and I didn't know what I was going to be or what I wasn't going to be. And she said, you remind me of a student that I had when I was teaching at UMass by the name of Wendy Nix. And at this time, Wendy Nix was all over ESPN. She was hosting NFL Live. She was all over the place. And I'm, 20 years old in college, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, Wendy Nix? Really? Wendy Nix? And that all of a sudden gave me a little confidence boost that hey, I can do this. And I had a similar thing when a guy who was a program director at a radio station in Portland, Oregon, and had Colin Cowherd at his midday show and went to ESPN, and later Cowherd came with him. And he said to me one time when I was really young in this, he was like, you've got a lot of the traits that Colin has. And I was like, what? What? Colin Cowherd? And it's things like that that encourage me. And so when I look at his experience with Manning and Stafford and Burrow and what that means for Levis, I don't think it means that I'm going to get Joe Burrow, that he made Joe Burrow, and then he's going to turn around and he's going to make Will Levis Joe Burrow. If he does, that'd be freaking great. But I don't think that's going to happen. But where I do think this really is beneficial is just every now and then to say, hey, Peyton used to do something like that, and you're the only other guy I've ever seen that is able to do that the way Peyton is. And then the hope is that Will Levis hears that it's like, Peyton Manning. Me. And it just raises the confidence a little bit. But as far as what does that experience, it's always a good, gets us excited of like, oh yeah, you're going to develop the quarterback for sure because you worked with Joe Burrow. It's like, it's not really like that. But I do think that the experience, he talked about how Peyton kind of showed him how a quarterback should run his life and run his day. And I'm like, there's also kind of another thing when it's like, hey, I know you think you want to do things this way. When I was in Denver with Peyton, what Peyton would do is, what I did with Stafford when we were in Detroit and we weren't winning a lot of games was we blah, 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 blah. And I do think that helps because I think that gets a young guy kind of excited. Now, I don't know if Levis's personality is like mine and would get excited about that. I do think that Levis, as I said, in the games, I can almost sense that he's got a little bit of anxiety and like a little bit like when the game starts to get away. I always feel like Levis wants to go win the game on this throw. And it's always like, hey, calm down a little bit. You're down by 14 points. You need 2 scores. You're not going to get it back all on one play. And so, I just think that those experiences help him say, hey, with Peyton, this is what we did. Hey, with this one, this is what we did. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Lenny says they were wrong, Jared. They might be. But I feel pretty good about how far we've made it all as a group so far. So probably not giving up now. Plus, I have no other skills in life, so if I couldn't do this, I don't know what I would do. I truly don't know how I would be able to earn a living. One texter into the text line says, if the Titans didn't have Will Levis, would Brian Callahan have been the coach that they would have wanted to hire? I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer. It's kind of like, well, they do, so it doesn't matter. And I think this is good for him. I think this is good to have an offensive guru coach who seems very composed, who has a catalog of experience and can really go back into that, and I think can probably relate to the quarterback some. We'll sit down with him tomorrow. We'll get our feeling, one way or another. But it's hard to sit there and say, like, what would they have done if they didn't have him? 615-737-1025 here on our program. So Raheem Morris to the Falcons. Now, that doesn't really mean anything to me. But Raheem Morris to the Falcons does mean something for another coach who I can't believe isn't going to get a job. They told us he was. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 here on our program. And let's go ahead and give away a pair of tickets. I'm in a good mood. Before you can buy them, to see Billy Currington and Kip Moore at Ascend Amphitheater on Saturday, May 18th. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. Tickets go on sale tomorrow at 10 a.m. So good luck with that. Stillman and Company. It's 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So you heard in Ian's update, Raheem Morris to the Falcons. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't really care about the Atlanta Falcons. And quite frankly, I don't really know if there's anything that's ever going to get me to care about the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they were cool when they had Michael Vick. But even when they had Arthur Smith as their coach, I didn't really care about the Atlanta Falcons. I didn't care about the Atlanta Falcons when Matt Ryan won league MVP until Tom Brady faced him in the Super Bowl and pulled off the greatest comeback ever. I'm not an Atlanta Falcons guy. But the bigger story for me is not who got the Falcons job and who got the Panthers job, but the bigger story is who didn't get the Falcons job and who didn't get the Panthers job and who interviewed for and didn't get the Charger job. And that is Michael Richard Vrabel. No job. Now, I don't think Seattle's going to hire him. And that would be, I guess, the last shot. Washington's going to go with Ben Johnson. Let me just say this. I think the media owes you guys an apology. And I guess I am in the media, but I never cared about this. I mean, I thought Vrabel was going to get a job, but I never cared about if Vrabel gets a job. If you fire Vrabel, he'll get a job tomorrow. I never cared about that because that's what they used to always say about Jeff Fisher. But everybody told us that anybody out there that ever says that Mike Vrabel wasn't a great coach, you're crazy. Every team in the league would stumble over themselves in order to be able to hire Mike Vrabel. Diana said that teams would fire their coach. They were considering firing their coach to hire Mike Vrabel. And then when Seattle fired Pete Carroll, it was like, well, maybe there is a team that is thinking about firing their coach in order to hire Mike Vrabel. Nope. So you guys, I think, are owed an apology. Where is the whole Mike Vrabel will get a job in 5 minutes? Where are those people? Because Mike Vrabel's not getting a job. And the one that stands out to me, like he was never going to get the Chargers job. And I don't think he ever really wanted the Panthers job. You know, in some of these cases, these guys have to go interview because it's like, and I don't know what it says in Vrabel's contract or what it doesn't say in Vrabel's contract. I have no idea. But I guess, you know, it may say in there, hey, you need to make an attempt to gain employment or we're not going to pay you, which means do some interviews and then you can say, I interviewed for the Chargers and they didn't hire me. But Atlanta, I mean, I don't understand. The Chargers I get. They hired Jim Harbaugh. They wanted Jim Harbaugh from the start. They were always going to hire Jim Harbaugh. So I don't blame Vrabel for not getting that job. Vrabel obviously wasn't going to get this job. Vrabel, Washington, they're not going to. The guy who's the GM in Washington last year turned down the opportunity to interview for the Titans GM job, and I think that was probably because he didn't want to work with Vrabel. I don't think Vrabel would have wanted to go to the Panthers because that's a gong show there, though good luck to Dave Canales. All of those things. But Atlanta, I didn't think he was going to get that job because I thought Belichick was going to get that job the entire time. But once they hired Raheem Morris, it's like, whoa. Like, let's put the resumes side by side here. Morris and Vrabel. With Belichick, if the owner has just a fancy for Belichick, there's nothing you can do anyways. And so, yeah, maybe he was thinking about hiring Mike Vrabel, but he just interviewed him because the whole time it was a sham and he was going to hire Belichick. But once you hire Raheem Morris, all of the reasons to not hire Vrabel kind of go out the window, right? Well, I want an offensive guy. Raheem Morris isn't an offensive coach. Well, Vrabel wasn't great in Tennessee. He was okay, and then it kind of fell apart there at the end. So Raheem Morris was 4-7 as the interim coach in Atlanta in 2020, 21-38 as a head coach. Now, again, I don't hold that against him. but 21-38. Vrabel's record is much better than that. He's never finished better than third when he was 10-6 in 2010. And he might be a great coach. This has nothing to do with Raheem Morris, who I have a lot of respect for. But again, it's not like Mike Vrabel lost out to Jim Harbaugh. It's not like Mike Vrabel lost out to Bill Belichick, where the owner wants something specific. It's not like he lost out to an offensive coach. The Falcons just didn't want him. They interviewed him twice. And so Mike Vrabel's not getting a job in this cycle. And first of all, I'm totally against that. I want Vrabel to coach next year because, gosh, I would love it if Vrabel was out there and then every week, if Vrabel's 3-1, people are going to get mad. If Vrabel's 1-3, people are going to go crazy and laugh about it. That's what I wanted. Just the story of Mike Vrabel coaching next year, especially if it's a team that plays the Titans, but even if it's not, because Vrabel is popular. And now, I guess, polarizing. Oh, I wanted it so bad. And he's not going to get it. And I wonder, when it comes down to the Atlanta interview, I wonder how hard he tried for these jobs, but I wonder, is the word on the street that maybe he's a little too arrogant? Maybe it was a little too much A.J. Brown. Maybe it was that nobody wants the Patriot way anymore. I don't know. With Bill, I think what happened is the old heads collided. Rich McKay, who's at the side of Arthur Blank, didn't want, somebody that has the reputation Belichick has and the skins on the wall that Belichick has. He didn't want Belichick coming in there. And the reputation with Belichick is that he does things his way. And he ran out Bobby Greer in New England. And Rich McKay is probably thinking he's going to run me out here and make this a battle for Arthur Blank's affection. And I don't want any part of that. And the GM probably didn't want Belichick there because, of course, Belichick's going to want to be GM. And so it's we don't want him. Okay, fine, And I bet Bill could not suck it up. Even though he's, 14 wins it is away from the all-time record? I don't think Bill could probably suck it up and say to the owner, hey, if you want me just to coach the team, I'll coach the team. If that's what you want, that's what you'll get. GM can GM. Rich McKay can sit up in the suite with you. I'll play nice. Just let me coach the team. And I bet Bill couldn't do that. And that's probably why Bill's not the coach there. But I don't think Vrabel comes in with those demands. Right? And he couldn't get the Falcons job. And so, regardless of what happens to Vrabel, look, if I was Buffalo, I'd think about it. If I was Philadelphia, I definitely would think about it. If I was Philadelphia, I know they hired Vic Fangio, but I'd want Vrabel on the staff. Just that way, week 4, things start going haywire. It's all right, Sirianni's out, Vrabel's in. But I think you all are owed an apology. Because we were told, Diana, Charles Robinson, we were told, you fire Mike Vrabel, and he will have a job tomorrow. And it is officially tomorrow. And Mike Vrabel does not have a job. There's one other thing I want to touch on. I listened to the Wesley Woodyard interview yesterday that everyone said, you got to go listen to this Wesley Woodyard interview. Number one, it doesn't sound really any different than the axe he was grinding 3 or 4 years ago. Because he came out on our station and the other station, and he came out and crapped on Vrabel, but Vrabel was popular at the time, and so it was well, what do you think? What do you believe? Whatever. But I listened to it, and it just sounded like somebody who just wanted to complain. It just, quite frankly, sounded like he just wanted to bitch about Vrabel. You can't tell me Mike Vrabel lost the team when after Wesley Woodyard leaves, they win 2 straight divisions. You can't tell me he lost the team when I saw the last game of the last game of the season against Jacksonville. That team played hard. That team cared. So, talking about, they put Malcolm Butler in cover 4 in the AFC Championship game. That's nice, except that Malcolm Butler didn't play in that game because he was hurt. broke his wrist in November. So it just sounds like Wesley Woodyard's bitter. I don't know what about, but it sounds like he's bitter, and he just threw a bunch of stuff against the wall. And the people that want to say bad things about Vrabel were like, yeah! But they didn't have a lot of juice. And it's like, if you're going to, talk your trash, you got to have something better than, he didn't let kids in the locker room, but he let his own kids in the locker room. It's like, okay. And again, I can't believe he lost the team when Derrick Henry, Taylor Lewan, and Will Compton, who all played on the Titans after Wesley Woodyard, when they were all boo-hooing on that bus the day they fired Vrabel. But Vrabel didn't have a job. So does Vrabel go the D coordinator route, or does Vrabel sit at home, eat popcorn, watch Ohio State this year? Because he becomes the candidate du jour if they lose to Michigan again, which is incredible. Vrabel tried to hire Ryan Day to be his offensive coordinator here, and now Vrabel's going to be basically sitting over Ryan Day's shoulder the whole time. Like, oh, you only beat Illinois by 13. Huh. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. And we will continue along on the press conference today. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. Let's talk Window Nation. Let's talk about these windows. That's right. WindowNation.com. Window Nation's the best. In fact, I got them coming out to my house. And so now we're seeing 1 week it's ice cold, it's freezing in Nashville. The next it's 65 degrees. And that can cause serious issues for your energy and at your home and everything else. So what you want to do, if you are thinking about it, what you want to do is you want to give my friends at Window Nation a call. It's real easy. And not only that, it will add value to your home. It'll add value and it'll save you on your energy costs. And replacing those windows is easier and more affordable than you think, with no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. That's right. So whatever's perfect for your home, whatever that window style is, 50% off. Seems pretty cool, huh? That's right. Make your windows look better for you, make them more comfortable for your home, and raise those values of those homes. That's right. Again, that's Window Nation, 866-90-NATION, or online at windownation.com.
The one thing that stood out to us with Callie was just his ability to not only know what he wants, but be able to articulate that in a clear and concise manner. And what that would allow us to do, it allow our players to understand what their roles are and go out and execute and play fast, which is what we're going to do. But the only other side of that, as a scout, as a personnel guy, it gives us the ability to know what we're going out to hunt for. And one thing that we keep talking about here as our group is hunting at the same time isn't the same as hunting together. And under Brian Callahan, we will be going out and hunting together. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited, and I'm actually ready to get off this podium and get ready to get started.
Hunting at the same time is not the same as hunting together. Rand Carthon, that little veiled shot right there at Vrabel, which we need more of that. 2 weeks ago, our relationship was great. Everything about it was great. All these stories come out about it. Actually, it wasn't very good. And now it's, fire a little pot shot there. 615-737-1025. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. If you missed it, Raheem Morris to the Falcons. Vrabel didn't get that job. Dave Canales to the Panthers. Vrabel didn't get that job. I don't think Vrabel wanted the Panthers job. Vrabel didn't get that job. And I think Vrabel will be sitting on the sidelines this year. Now, let me say this before everybody gets all up in arms and starts celebrating like Mike Vrabel's never going to work again in his life, that he's some bum coach. I mean, he will be hired next year. And it might be like Buffalo or Dallas or one of those teams. So we were, they were wrong about he'll get a job tomorrow, but he'll get a job next year. Bill, I don't know at 72 years old. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Cedric's been waiting patiently. Cedric, go ahead.
Hey, Jerry, what's Vrabel's middle name?
Richard. Well, his middle name is actually George, but on this show, occasionally he becomes Michael Richard Vrabel.
The foreshadow is so amazing. I love it, man. Listen, I appreciate the apology, man, on behalf of the media, because everybody said that bum would get a job tomorrow within 30 minutes. Dude, it's amazing. That's all I got about Coach Beathead. Hey, Jerry, I didn't get my guy, Coach Glenn, but I love the direction of the franchise. I love what Rand said at the initial press conference that you didn't like. I love how he talked about Amy's vision.
About how you'll see the vision?
After the fire, yeah, he wouldn't tell y'all the vision. But Amy, if you listen to what she said with Mike Keith, she didn't want to discuss the vision. Today, the vision came out. It was clear. We've got a coach. He's going to bring us into the modern era. I'm on board with it, man. Coach Callie, let's go, man. I got to get me one of those Rand Carthon T hats, and hey, that's all I got to say, man.
Oh my God.
I'm out.
Thank you for your call. So I don't, the Rand press conference was still a disaster. But the one 2 weeks ago. But I am like Cedric in that, he wanted Aaron Glenn. I wanted Bobby Slowick, but I do like Brian Callahan. And I thought he handled his press conference well, as was expected, because it's the introductory press conference, and even Jeremy Pruitt can win those. But I'm not sure that just because of, they hired a coach that I'm impressed with, that all of a sudden everything is right in Titanland. Like, there is a lot of work that they have to do. I mean, a lot of work. Getting a T-hat. Texter to the text line says, let me preface this by saying I didn't think Vrabel should be fired. I think the scolding of the Titans and praise of Vrabel from the national media is not because they think Vrabel is a Hall of Famer. It comes with an unspoken parenthetical. Mike Vrabel is a great coach of this horrible franchise, the texter writes. They could never do better. Know your place, Titans fans, the texter says. It's just like Mark Stoops at Kentucky. The media can't slobber enough over Vrabel, but they don't want him to coach their teams. He's a great coach, again, for a terrible program. Let me say this. I think there's something to that. I'm not one of these guys that just, the media hates us. But every time the Titans are good, and now is not that time, but every time that the Titans are good, it always feels like it's a but. Right? In 2008, the Titans had the number 1 seed, and they made the playoffs, and they beat Indianapolis in that great Monday Night Football game at home, and they crushed the Steelers in order to get home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs, and yet every prognosticator when it came to the Titans said, well, and they went Indianapolis with Manning, or Big Ben in Pittsburgh or somebody else other than the Titans. Now the Titans lost, so it kind of justified that. 2021, Titans had the 1 seed. Everybody was talking about Josh Allen and the Bills, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and it kind of justified that. But I have noticed that every time the Titans are good, it's always like, well, yeah, you got Tennessee. And maybe it's because the Titans have never had an elite quarterback since McNair won the MVP. But I think it's deeper than that. It's like Indy, for some reason, gets this inflation where as soon as Indy shows a sign of life, it's like, oh, Indianapolis is really, 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 really good. And I don't feel like they talk about the Texans or the Jags like that, but they do talk about Indy like that. And I don't know why that is. Texture says, any insight as to why Bobby Slowick isn't getting of these jobs? Is he linked to Seattle or Washington? Seattle, I don't know. I think they're going to go with Dan Quinn, but I don't know. Washington is going with Ben Johnson. So that means, and I do hate this, that may mean another year of Bobby Slowick paired with C.J. Stroud. And that cannot be good for the Titans. Like, that cannot. LD from McMinnville says, you're saying that the fans need an apology from the national names you mentioned, but don't forget there were articles written about how good the relationship was between Vrabel and Carthon, and local media members ready to fight when you mentioned Vrabel might be fired. Where's that apology? Well, I'll say this about the Vrabel-Carthon thing, about how great that relationship was supposed to be and everything else. I mean, I think that the reporters that wrote the articles that their relationship was good, I think that they kind of, were misled. And a reporter's job is to report. It is obvious that Vrabel did not see eye to eye with the collaboration process that the Titans clearly desire. And I get it. Like, I understand if Vrabel's not going to have respect for Rand Carthon, that's not going to work. But I can't get mad at somebody, for people that were writing articles or making reports. Like, again, let's use Diana as the example, right? She wrote the report that the Titans were not going to fire Vrabel. And, well, they told her that. Like, so what is she supposed to do? But the whole, Vrabel will get a job tomorrow. Like, that's different. Dude, but that didn't happen. One texter says that apparently Colin Cowherd and Nick Wright are saying that Andy Reid's going to retire and Mike Vrabel's going to take over the Chiefs. Why would you do that to Mahomes? Why would you ever do that to Mahomes? Put him with Vrabel. And it's not that I think Vrabel's a bad coach. It's just, if I was an offensive team, I wouldn't want Vrabel as my coach. If I was an offensive team, I wouldn't want any defensive guy to be my coach. I think what I would need in today's game in order to want a defensive coach would be a veteran quarterback who's well established with his offense, with an older offensive coordinator that's probably not going to get poached up for a job. So, for instance, Kirk Cousins and Arthur Smith, they're together. You can have a defensive coach. What you can't do is what the Chicago Bears are going to do, which is draft a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick with a defensive coach. Because if Shane Waldron gets the quarterback right, then he's getting a head job. Now you have to start over. If he doesn't, they're going to fire Matt Eberflus, and then they're going to go hire another coach into year 2. And I don't think that's the right way to go. Chip says teams are seeing through Vrabel's ego, smugness, and power-hungry plays. I love it. Let's see. Dre's up next on Vrabel. What's up, Dre?
What's going on with you, Jared?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Now, man, what did I tell you a couple months ago about Vrabel and his coaching staff and how he wanted everybody to just toe the line on him, how it was like, I want a room full of alpha beta males. Yeah, you can have your idea, but we're going to do it my way. And now that the news is coming out of what kind of individual he was, you start to see why we have a stagnated.
Is there news that's coming out about the individual that he was.
You can see it. You can see it in the action. You can see it in the product on the field. You can see it in the product on the field. I mean, can we agree on this right here? If Vrabel was a little more fluid and allowed his generals that he hired, that he put in place, to have some type of original idea outside of his, that he possibly would still have this job.
I think if Vrabel was less arrogant, I think he'd still have the job, yes.
Yeah. Well, we can call it whatever you want to. And one more thing, man. The guy down in Houston, the OC in Houston.
Sure.
I believe that's fool's gold, buddy. Think about it. Nobody knew what they were getting out of C.J. Stroud nor him. New staff, all the above. That's fool's gold. They're going to come down to earth next year.
I hope.
I'm calling that.
Dre,
I believe that.
Dre, I appreciate your call. I hope, because if not, if C.J. Stroud has another year like he had this year, he becomes he graduates to the big boy table really quickly. And the quarterbacks who get to the big boy table in year 2 are like Patrick Mahomes and Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow. Those are the quarterbacks that get to the big boy table in year 2. That Brady wasn't. Now, he won the Super Bowl, but he threw for 130 yards. Drew Bledsoe played the AFC Championship game because Brady got hurt. Brady wasn't a big boy table quarterback by year 2. If Stroud has another year like that, everybody around here is in a lot of trouble. FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right, my official sportsbook app. When it comes to the NFL playoffs, you've got one game that you've got to win at a time. But when you bet the NFL playoffs on FanDuel, one game can mean a lot of wins. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and it has all of your favorite bets, like the money line, the spread, and all sorts of prop bets. I feel more comfortable about San Francisco in the NFC title game than I do about any kind of bet in the AFC Championship game, just because I think that is a true heavyweight fight right there. Right now, every day there's an NFL playoff game, FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay. That means when you combine all of your bets, you've got a chance at a bigger payday, and you'll get bonus bets back if your SGP doesn't win. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM if you don't already have an account, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and older and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
You've been known as a guy who has been able to take quarterbacks and maximize what they do well, like you mentioned before, even to the point of adjusting from Joe Burrow to Jake Browning in the middle of the year. What's kind of been the key to that you've found in terms of maximizing what a guy can do?
Communication. Being able to hear what quarterbacks are comfortable with, what they like. The offense is always going to have enough plays. There's always going to be enough scheme. And so you want to know what the quarterbacks feel great about. And Jake was incredible with his ability to communicate what he liked. We put those things in for him so he could have success. And that's part of what fosters a great quarterback room is the communication between myself, the coordinator, the quarterbacks coach, and the quarterbacks in the room is knowing what they like and what they do well. And we try to do as much of that as possible. So if a quarterback says, I don't like something, we're not going to use it, we're not going to call it. And that to me is the most critical part. If you have great feedback and great rapport and a great relationship with those guys, they'll do a great job of giving you the information you need to help them and put them in position to be successful. And Jake was fantastic at it and obviously led to quite a bit of success.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan, Titans head coach. And see, what he said there sounds just so basic, right? Talking about communication. And yet I think it is so important. In fact, I think in a lot of relationships, whether they're, romantic relationships or relationships with colleagues or whatever it may be, communication is absolutely paramount. And I think in the past, the way things were done, and this is previous societies, but the NFL certainly this way, I think it was, I'm the coach, and I tell you how to play quarterback. Do you understand? Yes, sir. It's like Chuck Noll putting Terry Bradshaw on the bench and Terry Bradshaw going up to Chuck Noll and saying, I'd like to be traded. And Chuck Noll saying, we're not going to trade you. And that even after all of the Super Bowls and all of the winning and everything else, Terry Bradshaw didn't even go to Chuck Noll's funeral. Didn't even go. Because that's the way it used to be, right? Belichick and Brady. Yeah, they play nice now, but it was a rough divorce. Because the whole time it was, Tom's quarterback. We're going to do things my way, though. All the time. It wasn't wow, I'm lucky to have the greatest quarterback who ever lived. It's no, I developed him. He works for me. Yeah, you and your guru need to go into the work shed to go stretch out. That's the old school way. The new school way is communication. The new school way is, hey, we're in this together. What do you need? And a lot of you may not like that. And I understand that. But that's where this is all going. Everything, they use the word collaboration so much that it honestly makes me sick to use it myself. But I don't use it as much as they do, and I'm not trying to sell you on something that clearly wasn't happening like they did last year. But everything in business, for the most part, is a collaboration nowadays. That's why people that have jobs can't fill them, because it's like people don't want to do that. People don't want to work that job anymore. Why? Doesn't pay enough, tough hours. They'd rather work from home. They'd rather work here. They'd rather be. That's how this works. And so instead of being upset that the times are changing, you can either do that or you can go with where the times are headed. And that's where the Titans finally are now, is kind of in the new era of the NFL. Players aren't empowered like they are in the NBA. In the NBA, all the good players make so much money that they don't even actually have to play in the games anymore, because they'll sell enough tickets and TV deals and everything else just to play occasionally. And so the coach has no say in anything. Milwaukee, they hired a coach. They just fired him and brought in Doc Rivers the other day because they're afraid Giannis is going to leave because they have no power over them. That's not how the NFL works. But the way the NFL does work is, hey, we're all in this together. Joe Burrow is in this together with Zack Taylor, and he was with Brian Callahan. It's not like Will Levis is working for Brian Callahan. It is Will Levis is working with Brian Callahan, because quite frankly, if Levis doesn't get it and it doesn't work for Levis, he won't have a job. And there's a pretty strong chance, because they're going to try to see if they can do it with Levis, that Brian Callahan might not have a job, that Rand Carthon might not have a job if it doesn't work with Will Levis. Because he's going to be your quarterback this year, and you're going to get some old veteran to be the backup, some Chad Henne type to be the backup. And so if something happens to Levis, you're screwed. And you can't bench Levis because Blaine Gabbert's your backup. And if you put Blaine Gabbert in there, you might as well quit. And then after that, maybe you would try to think about somebody else. But even then, it's a big investment here. So you have to work together. That's where the NFL is. And I think even though Vrabel was young in age, Vrabel's experience was all Bill Belichick, Bill Cowher, Urban Meyer. And so it was all just kind of the my way or the highway. And Bill O'Brien is an absolute my way or the highway guy. Just look at how he got 2 general managers fired in Houston. So the new era of life, of American society, I can't speak for the other countries, but the new era is that employees are more like colleagues than they ever have been. That the dynamic of power, the I'm in charge, so you listen to me, has never been weaker. And your choices are this. Either you embrace it and you work together, or you throw a fit about it and you're Bill Belichick right now trying to get a job and nobody wants to hire you. And I actually think that the way the Titans are going to try to do things now actually yields better results. I mean, I really do. I think if you want that, if you want to be that kind of team, if you want to be what the Rams are, and that's a partnership with Matthew Stafford, not a dictatorship. That's the way you got to be. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company, we roll along. 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, Predators today on the road at Minnesota. Boy, they need a win out there in St. Paul. Hal Gill joins us, presented by Duncan. Hal, Predators absolutely need a win, and it's not like it's the end of the world if they lose tonight, but it is starting to get very tight. It's like probably me around holiday time when I'm trying to button my pants up, and I'm like, oh, but better suck it up here. That's how I'm starting to feel about
Don't blame the holidays. Don't blame the holidays for your problems.
That is true. It's starting to feel that way right now in these wild card standings, Hal.
Yeah, no, this is a fun time of year, and I know the guys are looking at All-Star break coming up, and it's 4 games away, but I think this is we're getting close to that make or break. Which way our GM's going to go as they get to All-Star break, and you're looking at. The Preds could get a win tonight and be poised to try to finish off with 3 more games that could get them above the line, or it could go the other way. So I agree with you. This is a big one. But I do feel like after that Florida game, they played a high-paced team, and they matched it at times. And so I think they are going to take some confidence against playing against a good team. And they're going to need it tonight because I think John Hines has this Minnesota Wild humming, and they're healthy, and I think they're going to make a push, and this is even bigger for them. So get ready for it.
I mean, the problem the other night is the Predators have one line that can score, and they didn't score. And when that one line doesn't score, it's going to be really hard for the Predators to compete with good teams. I ask that because Juuso Parssinen got sent down yesterday. I just keep wondering how – when is one of these young secondary guys going to step up and be consistent? Tomasino can do it for a game and have a couple of goals over a 2 or 3 game period. Evangelista, a couple weeks ago had goals in back-to-back games. But it just doesn't feel like one of those guys has really taken the opportunity and kind of put their flag down to say, I'm an NHL player.
Yeah, I think they're all good and they've all played good hockey, but I'm not maybe necessarily worried about the consistency as much as I need bigger splashes. And you have a bunch of young guys, and they can share the load. So if you have one guy who has a big night, and ideally you want them all to play well every night, and that's the rosy glasses looking through and saying, hey, this could be a great team if that happens. But you do need big splashes, and you need guys to affect games. And whether that's Novak one night or Glass and Evangelista the next night, Parssinen is a tough case where I think he did so many things well. He's just got to get his confidence up, and he's got to play with a little more pace and speed to his game. And so I think going to Milwaukee, he can get that, and hopefully when he comes back up, he's firing on all cylinders. Because you need these guys to step up. You need someone to do something big. And tonight I'm looking at, Novak, Glass, and Evangelista. Can they pop off the page? Can they give you something? Novak had a great game here last year at the end of the season. It was a big game, and they lost it, but he was spectacular. So I'm looking for that coming back home to Minnesota. Maybe tonight's the night.
Hal, which one of those guys do you think they're counting on to maybe burst through the glass ceiling and stay there?
I think they're looking at all of them. I really do. I think they're expecting big things from all of them. But I think Barry Trotz and Bruno are being patient with them. But you'd like to see one guy have a highlight reel goal, and you'd like to see one guy make a great defensive play, and one guy to drive the offense and sustain offensive zone pressure. And I think that's what you're looking for, game changers, and that's where I think they can all do that. I just think it's got to pop, and it's still early, and there's still time for these guys to cement themselves as NHLers and get through that glass ceiling. But we're hoping it's sooner rather than later, because this team has been pretty good without that secondary scoring punch, and they could be even better, obviously, if they got that.
Do you think that the frustration, do you think that the Predators' frustration right now with the fact that they played, I thought, okay Saturday against Arizona, and they were just chasing the game the entire time, and then the other night where they just couldn't score, do you think that that has kind of festered into maybe something a little bit bigger that could really hurt this team because it does feel like, looking back on their last road trip, the LA game was good, but Vegas was a game where I felt like they played pretty well. And there's only so many times I can sit there and say, well, they played well tonight, but they didn't win. And I know that if that frustrates me, I can only imagine how much it must frustrate them, Hal.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the beginning of the season when we saw this lineup. I thought if this team is going to have any success, they're going to have to overachieve. I mean, that's what a young team does. That's what you expect is an overachieving team. And so I'm looking at it as, hey, that Florida game, if Novak buries, he's got an open chance right in front of the net, and Stolar's made a great save on it.
Unbelievable
But then Nyquist had a chance. You're only a couple chances away, and that's a game that is a winnable game. So I think it's right there. And so, hey, every team goes through those spurts where they just can't score. It's just how long are you stuck there, and when do you say, okay, this is really what our team is, or can you turn it around and either defend well enough to get wins when you're struggling, or can you get out of that struggle quickly and start putting up numbers? Because I think Juice is playing well. The defense has been really good, but you're not getting the scoring right now. And so every team goes through it. The good teams don't go through it for long, and that's the difference right now. And they need to nip it in the bud because it's starting to get to the point where you're like, okay, now we're a little worried about it. I'm not. I know you're always worried, Jared, but I wouldn't worry too much. But I think we're getting to that point where you need to see some production.
I'm not worried. I'd say I'm frustrated. I'm not mad. I think sometimes people get mad and frustrated, kind of, mixed, not the exact same feeling. I would say I'm just a little bit frustrated. Hal, hopefully they'll get a win tonight and I won't be as frustrated. Great stuff presented by Duncan, as always, Hal Gill. Hal, appreciate you.
Thanks. You're hoping for a big win and then a nice easy flight off to Edmonton, because that's going to be a tough one too. Doesn't get easy on these guys.
Enjoy the ice-cold
tonight.
road trip. It was freezing cold and snowing here. You guys were out west. Well, now it's nice here, and you guys are going to have to go out and, take care of yourselves. Hal Gill, as always. Predators game day usually is presented by, well, it always is, and is today, presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. List your home with TJ and get your house seen or heard and sold. And again, the Predators are taking on the Minnesota Wild, coached by John Hines, and the Minnesota Wild are kind of somewhere around that playoff chase. They're sitting there at 21-21-5. The Predators are 25-21-1, and the Predators are hanging on to the last playoff spot by one measly little point. So they need it tonight. That's it for us. Coach Brian Callahan will join us, sit down with us tomorrow. We're very excited about that. Stillman and company, we'll see you all tomorrow too.